Let's call the meeting to order, please. Let's rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One thing, well, actually two things omitted from this agenda. One is approval of the minutes, and the second one is report from the school board. So,
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
as amended by Cheryl?
Yes. Yes.
She sent through 4 amendments, which I appreciated. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. I'm not sure, did we approve the minutes from the week before?
Yes, we did.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, okay, good. Good, okay. Larry, have you got something to?
Actually, I have to say, no, I do not. I wasn't here at the last meeting for the school board.
For the school board?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I can just say that there was nothing budget-related to report that I can remember. I was there.
You were there, I was there, I don't remember anything budget-related.
Oh, it's for me.
No, don't be, I don't.
All right.
so that's what your reports came in.
Thank you.
Okay, our next order of business is to go through the various warrant articles to vote on the ones that have tax dollar impact, immediate tax dollar impact. So the first one is the operating budget. Could I have a motion to approve the operating budget that we put forward, please?
So moved.
Okay, that would be Mary, and second from Larry. Sandy, thank you for taking the minutes tonight. Discussion,
All right, I'll start it.
yes?
Okay. I did this today, and I gave a copy to everybody. Regarding the tax impact and increases. This it came to my attention when we had the public hearing, and I guess that's one of the reasons you have a public hearing, is to gather information and whatnot. To say I was shocked at the public hearing would be an understatement. I wouldn't even call it a tax impact, I don't know what the word is for the proposed impact on the taxpayers and citizens of these two communities if this budget is approved. It's, I was thinking about what I would say to you and how I would describe it. I think the best word to describe it is crazy. This is just crazy. To expect people, we're talking about real money here. The Newton impact at around $610,000 to $812. Kingston, 560 to 600. I don't want to go on and on about this. You get these arguments that it's only a few dollars here and there. Jim and I were talking about this. We've been around long enough to remember from years ago a school board member bringing in a 6-pack of beer and putting it on the table and saying, this is all you have to give up to pay for this taxes. Then we were told to give up our pizza. That's all you need to do. And then we were told, one less trip to Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Well, I don't drink beer, I very often get pizza, and I consider a Dunkin' Donuts coffee a treat. So, with these kind of figures, you're talking about getting the real impact on people's lives. A real impact. You're talking about heat, food, lights, medicine that's going to impact people. It's unacceptable. I cannot, in any good conscience, do this. You just can't. It's even the default budget. That's another whole subject. is pretty rough, but the proposed budget is just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. We expect to tell elderly people now that are living live in the winter, they shut off their house and live in a couple rooms. Well, now just go to one room and shut off the heat? I mean, what do you do? What do you say? Oh, you'll give up your medications to come up with another $600, $800 a year? I mean, you know, there was somebody who spoke the other day, said, at the public hearing, says, oh, it's only $1.38 a day, something like that. Well, you know what? When the tax man comes, he doesn't say, give me $1.38. Okay? He doesn't say, just give me $1, or I'll give you $1.38. You happy? He says, no, I want $800 and I want it today. Okay? It's not $1.38 a day.
It was a week.
A week? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
that's okay. Just to be clear.
A week.
Yep.
That's not going to work. And we're all going to be getting letters like I got last year from my mortgage company. Well, Mr. Swayze, you need to send us another $1,000 for your tax escrow. We need that in 30 days or in violation of your mortgage because you don't have enough money, you won't have enough money in your tax escrow to pay your tax payments. I remember calling them last year and saying, what? What is this about? And a nice lady, we talked for quite a while, and she says, she says, I'm looking at your history. I don't know where you live, but your taxes just keep going up and up. It's not us, you know. You have to pay them. She says, I'm sorry. I said, yeah, I knew that's what you're going to tell me. And I talked a little bit at the public hearing about businesses. You know, Kingston, we'll just say in Kingston, we'll say Kingston's got a $400,000 home that would be $600. People that have businesses have property that's assessed at millions. Their tax impact's going to be crazy. Now you're talking about them. What are they going to do? They're going to lay people off. Are they not, you know? And how do you invite businesses to town when one of the things that all business people look at is the tax situation? And they look at a graph, and ours is like this. It's like, I'm out of here. I don't need this. I'm not going to do this. We can't have a business where our taxes go up $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. Can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. We'll go somewhere else. So I would hope that this committee would reconsider. You know, there's been some preliminary votes, and that's all they really are, preliminary votes. Consider what you're going to do. It's okay to change your mind when you have new, impactful information come forward. And think about everybody that you represent. Everybody. Okay? And how do you offer amendment to them? Can I offer an amendment to the motion?
No, I mean, if the person making the motion wanted to accept an amendment,
No.
but.
Well, I would ask you to vote down this motion because I'm going to make an amendment.
I think we need to handle this motion first and then.
Okay,
you can make
but I'm
a
just going to say
motion.
what
Yeah.
I'd like to have you do.
That's okay, good.
Is vote
Yep.
this down.
No, I'm just talking procedurally.
That's
Yep.
fine, that's fine. They could say, vote this down, this motion down, say no, and I would make a motion afterwards that we,
As a point of order, you can amend a motion.
I know you can, but I didn't want to get
If
into
the
it.
person making the motion wants to accept the amendment. A friendly
An
amendment.
amendment can be made, it can be seconded, it then takes precedent over the
Okay,
main motion.
okay, so if you want to make an amendment, then we can vote on it, or you can.
Just want to make sure we know that we keep the procedure.
I think Jim's right, but I'm not.
That's okay,
We can go
that's
that
fine.
route, but your route's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Can I just have a copy of whatever Charlton shared? I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I think,
don't know what he
well,
shared.
basically, I think you have, I think you're aware of it, but here, you can have that, because I've got it on the screen here, too.
Oh, was it emailed to us? I didn't see it.
No.
Okay, the screen is kind of working, but not,
There you go.
I don't know if there's a button. Oh, okay, all right. So I did validate your numbers.
Wait a minute.
They're
I'm not
Wait,
done.
he's,
Oh.
hang on, yep. Go ahead, please, go ahead. You don't need to shake your pen
I'm
at
not
me.
shaking your pen at you.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm really not. Okay? This is a budget committee meeting. It'll continue to be so. So I will offer, back on my train of thought, offer a motion that we submit as our budget. And it's the budget committee's job to present the budget number. Okay? And that we present a budget number that's the default number. I'm not really pleased with that because that's a pretty big impact too. But I I don't think we can go any lower than that at this point. And I would hope that the board would then support that, so.
Can I just be clear? Are you proposing a new motion at
No.
this point?
No,
Okay.
I'll go on the way you want to handle it first.
Okay, fine. Okay.
This one will pass or fail, and then
Okay.
if it fails, I'll offer a new motion.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, good.
Okay.
Do you have anything further, or?
That's about enough.
Well, I'd like to make a couple of comments. I was in shock after we saw the numbers the other night. I don't know, maybe I was in la-la land. Very disappointed with the teacher's contract, and I think I told everybody I've...
We haven't gotten to that one yet, but
I know,
yeah.
but that's part of this whole program. And because I really felt the teachers should up their insurance, like people in the private sector do, not having large increases to cover it. I know my wife, the last several years that she was working, there were small raises, and the insurance kept on going up, especially under Obamacare in the last several years. And so that was very disappointing to me, and that's all part of what Charlton is saying. I'm sure when we vote on those other issues, but I want to bring that up. So I'm putting all those numbers together, and Charlton did a nice job here. It's staggering. And I would support Charlton on his motion that we do support the default budget as opposed to the budget that we already approved.
Right. Does anybody else have any other, that's not the motion on the table right now. But the motion that's on the floor right now is to forward the proposed budget, the way we formulated it before, to the deliberative session. Yes, Cheryl?
I would like to ask Mr. Swayze if this motion does not pass and you are going to propose, are you going to propose another number,
Yes, the default number.
the default?
Do you have any other comments, Cheryl, or?
No, if he was going to propose another number, I was going to ask if he had the justification for what it was that he was suggesting would be reduced.
Okay. Sandy, do you have any comments? Do you have any, Mary?
I do not.
Do you have any?
My position's the same.
Okay, I have some because I have really, and I actually wrote these out. I've also been very concerned about the costs that are coming to our taxpayers. I was not shocked at the public hearing because I was very aware of what the numbers were going to be. In Newton, the taxpayers are going to be asked to pay about $900 more in property taxes on a $300,000 house if all the town and district warrants pass in March. The town amount is very tiny and modest part of that, but $900, that's a heck of a lot of money. So I've reached out and I've shared my concerns with some of the constituents that I know have supported me to be in this office. And not one of them wants to hurt education to save money. They just said, you know, it's awful, but if it's going to hurt education, we don't want it. My commitment when I was elected 4 years ago, and again last year, was to examine the budget to find every possible saving and to work for the best results for the children, and that commitment remains. As a district, we continue to spend far more than comparable districts. That is fact. Over the past 4 years, we've reduced staffing and found other savings where overspending has been identified. Our spending is still too high, in my opinion, and recent studies show exactly where it is. Now we have an administration who's working with all community members to solve the problems and the high spending. Even though our spending is still high overall, I believe that this is a bare bones budget for the way all our schools are set up right now. Until and unless the voters make some changes in our school configurations, we're going to continue to spend on 5 campuses and things like 12 students in a classroom at Memorial. I don't like it, but I can't change it unless the voters make some changes. The $381 in property tax credit that we received this year in Newton is going to be wiped out by the coming default budget alone. It's what, $1.27 mill rate, and the default budget's $1.27. With just the default, there is no gain or loss in tax costs for the past 2 years. So the proposed and contracts are where the tax increases lie for the next year. The difference with the proposed budget is technology updates, more books for elementary level kids, and a tuition increase for the Seacoast School of Technology. I think these are necessary and not optional. For me, To vote against this proposed budget or against the proposed contracts, including ice hockey, is to punish the current staff, administration, and students for poor management and oversight from past school boards and administration. As a district, I feel we need to move forward. We have leadership in place who have identified fiscally conservative ways to do that. I'm a part of that, and I'm proud to be. I wish fervently that all the savings we've identified could be done right now, today, to save money for our taxpayers, and they can't. Analysis is first needed. I hope that analysis will demonstrate that to reconfigure the schools gives educational as well as fiscal benefits, and that the logistical challenges can be overcome. I hate that taxpayers will continue to pay for past poor management. But it's not the current administration or staff or students who are at fault. I support all these warrants and will continue to work for future reductions. That's my statement.
I take that for minutes.
Pardon me?
You want to put that in the minutes, these things?
Yeah. Yes, Cheryl.
You didn't get all that.
Send it
So
to
if-
electronically.
I'll send it to you electronically. I have it
Great.
to make it easier for you.
If the reason, one of the main reasons, and you said it twice, that the budget is so high is poor management from past administration, why are we not able to see a significant savings as we have a new management who you laud as being much better managers? Why is, the budget didn't go down? So where do you think that it could be cut?
I think that it could be cut by redistributing how the kids, reconfiguring where the kids are going to the different schools. I think we could close the middle school. I hope that the study's going to show that. It's been
Do
identified.
you blame that on the past administration?
That's not what
I
she's
do.
asking you.
I do. I blame it on them because they did not look proactively at what it was. Instead, you know what they did? Every time we told them there were high costs, they said, no, you're lying. They wouldn't address the reality of the situation. They preserved staff, even in face of declining enrollments, when it was very clear.
Now, my
that they were-
question
So,
was to-
I'm answering your question.
No, you're not.
I'm saying the past poor management is that they refused to look at the reality of situations. Instead, they said that they weren't true.
So you think that this major increase is because of the fact that we have 5 campuses? And because the past administration did not get rid of one of those campuses or do something about that, that's why this is so high?
No.
This budget is so high?
Absolutely not, no. And we've been over that. We've looked at the revenues, we've looked at the costs. The reason that the costs are going up is that, one, we had $1.5 million tax credit last year. That is not being repeated this year. It's estimated to be $780,000.
So that has nothing to do with past this quote, mismanagement?
Cheryl, it has to do, the past mismanagement has to do with the high
I'm
costs.
just asking what you just said, which was last year, we had a tax
Do you want
credit.
me to answer
And
you?
we're not getting it this
Do
year.
you want me to answer you?
Are you going to answer that question?
I will answer you if you will allow me to.
Well, you just
Please stop interrupting
supposedly
me.
answered me, and
Whoa,
you
whoa.
did not address my question. That's why I'm
Should've got the
asking it
chairman
again.
involved in a debate. You are running a debate here, and that's okay, because we've always done that, but you're not answering her question.
Well, thank you for your opinion, Charlie.
Well, I know that, you're not. I heard her question.
Your question is, do I blame the high costs of per student on past mismanagement? Yes. Do I blame the reason that the taxes are going up so much entirely on past mismanagement? No. The costs are going up because we have lower revenues this year, and we have higher mandated expenses that are in the default budget, and so the lower revenues are going to require us to ante up just for the default. We have to ante up the same amount as the credit that we got back last year. What I blame the past administrations and school boards on is not looking at and addressing the reasons why we had such high costs per student. They preserved it and preserved it and preserved it, and their sacred cow was to maintain every bit of staffing, even though enrollments had already gone down 25%, and they're projected to go down at least another 25 in the future, and they refused to address it. Instead, I was told personally, you're lying about those numbers.
Well, I really don't want to get into that.
Well, that's the
I'm just
question you
looking
asked.
I'm looking at
That's the question you asked, Cheryl.
why this is so high this year, and as you said, there are multiple reasons why. And I really don't like getting into this past people did things that I didn't like. I really don't think that we need to be discussing that. We need to be looking at numbers and moving forward. And this budget, as you said, is bare bones. So with good management, it's bare bones, but it's still going up. So I just don't want to get into this talking about other people in the past. Let's move forward.
The
I
thing is-
agree that this is a high budget, but again, where are the costs? I don't think there's anything that this budget committee could have done that would have changed that.
No.
I think these things that we saw in this budget, which was hugely detailed, and we looked at, and we analyzed, and we asked questions, there was nothing in there that we could see that was outrageous, that would say that, you know, something's going wrong. Something's going wrong with taxes in New Hampshire, because, and Newton and Kingston, we don't have businesses to help offset our taxes. I don't like having to pay high taxes, and I feel very bad for people who are on fixed incomes. Maybe they can get a tax credit from the town. Maybe those people need to lobby the state. The state has a surplus this year. How about helping out these people who should, by right, because they had, when they had children, if they did, that there was support for the budgets then, that, and it only makes sense that your community is better when you have good education. More people will come in and move in and support the community if you have good education. I just don't know. It's a dilemma. I don't have the answers. I hear all sides, but I think we need to move forward and comment on this budget tonight and make decisions on this budget before us here now.
Okay, so I would like to address some of your things. First of all, you agreed with most of what I just had to say. Secondly, except that you don't agree that we should talk about why it's so high already. And I think it's very...
I don't
Hang
think we
on,
need to
I'm-
talk
I'm-
about personalities.
Excuse me, I'm not talking about personalities, I'm talking about facts. We did not address, as a district, high costs in the past. We are working to identify ways to bring some of those high costs down. It can't be done immediately. I wish it could. I wish it had been done in the past. It was not. And as a result, it burdens me very much that taxpayers are stuck having to pay for things that haven't been addressed earlier. It's being addressed now, and it will happen, but it wasn't addressed earlier, and that's why it's so darn high now. It has continued to be high for years and years and years. We're working at it. What we've found is that where we've made staff reductions and been able to do staff reductions as a district has been mostly in the high school and also in the middle school. The elementary schools are stuck. We can't do anything with redistributing classes in the elementary schools with the current configuration. We're stuck, and it pains me that we're going to be asking taxpayers to pay more money. One of the things on the flip side of that is that we gave them back a certain amount of money, so out of this $609 in Newton for a $300,000 house, $381 is money that they actually saved last year, so the net amount is $609 minus $381 for the increase over a 2-year period. So I think that that's important to note.
Yep, that is.
Sandy, you had your hand up?
Nope.
Okay.
I did.
Yes, Charlton?
All right. So I would point out that the chairman's comments are her own personal opinion, and you have a right to them, and they're...
As are each one of ours.
That's right, and they're interesting talking points. Cheryl's right. If we're supposedly on this grand course to save money and to, get things back in line, this is the second year we've been on this journey, and the result is massive tax increases. I I always love the words, the buzzwords, the talking points. We need to move forward. Move forward does not necessarily mean spend more money. Okay? It doesn't. And you hit, Chairman, you hit upon something, and I'm going to ask Jim Doggett to reply to it, because I know he's got a point on this. You got a business and you got lower revenues, what do? What do? There you go. So, Jim, would you address this, what you think ought to happen when the revenues go down?
Well, when the revenues go down, you do one of several options. You either reduce staff, reduce inventory, or close your business. I mean, those are the three business options.
And what about?
Hang on, we're not having a conversation.
You did.
Excuse me.
You did.
I
You
was
did.
answering Cheryl. No, I'm not going to have a conversation with you. We're listening to Jim right now.
Okay.
Jim,
Yeah.
Those are your three options. If you have staff, you can if you want to know personally, I have no staff. So that's not an option. My inventory is practical, but if you don't have inventory, it's hard to keep the doors open. If I were a business person in Kingston I luckily have a very good landlord and my rent is quite reasonable. I don't know how other people are actually managing, because I've seen the other rents out there and they are horrendous. And that's the reason that there is a lot of rental space available on Route 125.
I'm sorry, and this relates to the budget?
Because part of the rent is you're responsible for the taxes on your square footage. And when you start looking at, I know what people in Newton are paying for structures in the 125 development. They're paying $25,000 a year in taxes. Got to sell a lot of widgets in order to make the tax bill. It becomes a very large single block that you look at when you're working on your budget. You have to shell out even 20,000, even 10. That's something that you have to automatically cream right off the bottom line. And that could be the difference between having an employee or not.
Yes, Larry.
Well, there's one thing that everybody seems to be forgetting here. For one thing, this is not a business per se. This is a public-funded organization called a school district. One, you're mandated by both federal and state law that you have to have certain things. That money you cannot argue with. It is flat. Boom. If you start looking at that, then you got salary contracts. Regardless whether you like the price or not, people want more money when they work, or they'll go elsewhere. We had 20 teachers left last year, which ended up costing the district roughly $200,000.
I'm sorry, can you explain that?
Sure. When you get a new teacher in, you have to bring them up to speed. It costs you roughly $10,000 per teacher. That has been verified by the superintendent, so he can expand on that if you wish. This is stuff that you have no control over. Then you add insurance. That has to be there. You include transportation. You have no control over that either. If you sit there and tell somebody, I'm not picking your kid up, you take him to school, well, you better have your hanging head out there because it's going to be chopped off. You're right. As far as businesses go, they could not live with this budget. And I agree with you on that. But this is not a regular business. This is a public-funded business that half the profits, there aren't any. Our profit is the kids when they walk out here at seniors. I don't like high taxes any more than anybody else does. I'm on a fixed income. Am I going to be complaining about it? You're damn right I am. But I'm not going to sit there and say no to the kids That's our future. That's my Social Security. Let's put it down flat. That's my retirement. If those kids can't make it on the outside, I'm not going to make it as a retired person. None of you will. Because your money is not going to go anywhere. Our future relies on those kids. Whether you like it or not, that's where it goes. And it's going to cost us money. Everything we do goes up. You got a 3% increase in cost of living. That means that your oil has gone down, thank God, but the price of food is going up. Not only that, electricity is going sky high. There's a 30% increase on electricity this year. What are you going to do? Sit there and shut off the switch and say, no, we don't need electricity on Tuesday and Wednesday? You know, let's face the facts. We're going to have to spend money whether we like it or not, because we don't really have any other income but us. I do agree with you. We have means, and we're working on that, to get rid of the surplus over expense. We've already been through the NASDAQ study. We know that we have 5 campuses. We know we have one here that sits here at $68,000 a year. That does absolutely nothing but rot away. That's wasted money. We should be talking about how to get rid of that money instead of sitting here saying, well, let's cut teacher salaries, let's do this, let's do that. Let's do something that's practical and that we can do without a lot of trouble. That's all I got.
I wanted to say that one of the questions that we asked of the administration before was, what is the cost of a new teacher? And we never got an answer to that one.
Depends on the teacher, but on average, it's about $10,000 to train someone.
Okay, that's what
You
we were
have to-
told in past years, so.
Yeah, you have to remember that it's not just training people. Our most expensive commodity after facilities or with facilities is time. Time is incredibly expensive. One professional development day is about $80,000. When you consider the heat, electricity, teachers' salaries for the day, right? Now, those are days we're contractually obligated to provide, and they're a part of our work, but I have a couple of thoughts, but I'm waiting until it's appropriate to share because I keep kind of getting told not to talk. So I'll
No.
share when you're ready, right?
Thank you. There was something that you had said that, but, yes, Cheryl, you have your hand up.
Well, I'd like to comment about the facilities, because indeed, this district has tried to figure out what to do with that campus that we're not using. There were proposals that were brought before the town and the district, and it was voted down. They talked about possibly
I'm sorry, what? There were
the
proposals?
seminary building. There was a proposal to renovate that building into the SAU offices and have other options. There was a huge study. It was brought before the voters, and
Okay,
that was
thank you.
voted down. So to say that no one's been looking at the facilities, I think is a misstatement. There have been many. Jim, how many times have we looked at, what are we going to do with the seminary?
I've been on 4 committees.
Me too. 10 years.
So it has been addressed. It hasn't gone anywhere. It has not, I mean, it has been addressed many times, but nothing has been satisfactory to the voters. So it has been. We have also thrown out possibly becoming a cooperative with Fremont. That was around the time that we were looking to pass the new high school. That didn't go anywhere.
That was voted down.
That was voted down. So there have been multiple efforts to try and resolve the facilities and the costs that are going up because we're a small district. And when you have a larger district, you can get more volume discounts on things. So I just wanted to address that and make sure that that was put into the record, that there have in fact been efforts to look at the facilities.
Yes, Jim.
A couple of comments just from things that people have said tonight. First of all, when we discuss it as having 5 campuses, we have one campus that costs us $69,000 a year that we actually utilize a lot because we use Chase Field and Swayze Gym. I mean, it's not like that we're just taking $70,000 and wheeling it over to Main Street and dumping it in a hole in the ground.
I believe that 70,000 is attributable only to the seminary
That is
building itself, not the
It costs way more
facilities.
than that for the whole campus.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, we mentioned
We
70.
need to get rid of some.
I came up with 200,000
It
for
doesn't
the
do us
entire
anything.
campus.
We're just wasting.
But
That's about right.
Plus 48,000 for transportation to transport kids to the campus.
that,
That's another part.
that, however, is our choice.
Yep,
You have to start, you know.
So I think we need to stop referring to it as an idle campus because we do utilize it. The other thing is that, Larry, did you say it was 20 teachers left in this past year?
I think that's what I was told. I
Because
just got
that's
it.
higher numbers than we had during the years when the teacher contracts failed, when we had 17 and 18, and we were being told that it was disastrous and that these people were flowing out of here because of a failed contract. If, considering the salary increases and what have you that were in the last contract, we still had 20 people that left, there's got to be more of a reason than just money.
Money is one of them, I'd be willing to say. But I'd also say the sense of security is probably another one.
I'd like to, if it's
Can I say
okay with
something?
everybody.
Sandy wants to say something.
Oh, yes, Sandy, thank you.
One thing that irritates me is when we talk about 20 teachers leaving and including retired teachers in that amount, that's
Thank you,
not
Sandy. I was about to say that.
That's what I was going to ask Tom to
That
comment
drives me
on.
bananas, that 5, 6, 7 people could retire, and then we say 20 teachers left. Oh my gosh, it costs us $200,000. If we're going to talk about facts, let's talk about facts, not the
That was my
number
next
of
question,
teachers
is I
that
wanted to
said.
find out.
I know
They have to be
teachers that have
replaced,
left
right?
here. They work at my school. They left for various reasons.
Yeah.
It wasn't always about money. It was
No.
many different reasons. So to narrow this down and funnel it and say that they leave here always because of money is not accurate information. And that all of the sum total of the people that make a change out of our district means that that's the number of people that left. And it's all because of our budget or our taxpayer issues or whatever. That's not accurate.
I want to ask you to give some more definition to those 20, if I could, in a moment, but I just wanted to go back to one thing. I wanted to go back to the $300,000 house in Newton and the $609 increase that comes if everything is passed. And I want to take out of that the $381 that was a credit given last year and look at the total amount for a 2-year increase is $228 if everything passes. I'm sorry, that doesn't blow me out of the water. I think that's fairly reasonable. I look at our total of the last 5 years of increases that we've had in this district in budgets, and its averages, including everything this year, 1.6% over 5 years. This doesn't blow me out of the water. It blows me out of the water that we had a $381 decrease this last year, so it looks a lot higher. But in reality, over 2 years, it's only $228. And that seems to me very much in line with what is a reasonable amount for inflation. So that's just my thought. Yes, Charlton?
But when
A
you pay,
moment,
I'm
Tom.
going to ask you a question. When you pay your tax bill this year, say your house is $400,000, aren't you going to have to pay out of your pocket with cash $812?
Well, first,
The answer is either yes or no.
yes, you are.
There
Yes,
you
you
go.
are.
There you go.
However, I'd
So-
also like to say that I did look to
There you
see,
go.
I talked to both, I talked to the assessors in both towns, and the average cost of a house in Newton, of residential property in Newton, is $262,000, not $300,000 and not $400,000. And in Kingston, I wanted to know if there was a $100,000 difference because of the revaluation. The average cost in Kingston is $287,000, so it's $25,000 more. There's not a lot, that much distinction between the, between the assessment, and $400,000 is not the norm, just so you know.
Well-
And somebody who has a $400,000 house probably has more ability, I hope they have more ability to pay than somebody who has a $100,000 house.
Well, just so you know, I took those figures off of your presentation that you want to make at the deliberative session.
Well, that's,
just so you know.
yep.
Okay.
Well, since that time, I talked to the assessors,
Wow.
so, to get the accurate numbers. So I was going to share that in a little bit. Yes, Tom, I wanted to,
Well,
I wanted to ask Tom about the 20 teachers, if I could.
No, let Charlton go, it's fine.
Okay.
one, Jim and I talked about it, and he didn't answer my question, but remember, Jim, we talked about state revenues going down? And our budget should, at the very minimum, reflect that. That's what I wanted you to address. What you and I talked about is that we talk about reducing, our revenues are going down, but that doesn't like Steve. Oh, that don't matter. We're just going to keep
Our
spending.
revenues are based on average daily membership,
Yeah.
the number of students that we have at any given time. And that's actually the previous year. We get paid this year for the students we had last year because that's how the state runs things.
I just add the same for special ed too.
Excuse me?
Special ed, yep, lags a year behind as well.
Exactly, because special ed gives us catastrophic age, which, for the average case, pays at least 50 to 60% of the bill. Large cases, they pay even more because the way the district only has to pay up to twice the cost per pupil before we would get refunded. So consequently, if the number of pupils are going down, we're getting that much less state aid.
We are getting 30,000 in lower state aid projected for next year, just so you know. It's 30,000.
Okay, so that's approximately 8 students that we're anticipating losing.
No, $30,000 is 1.5 students. Our per pupil
For-
cost is over $16,000.
No. We get from the state, I believe it's $4,200 per student.
Oh, I thought you were talking in whole terms. I
No,
apologize.
no.
State revenues for next year are estimated to be $3,918,417 versus this year, $4,087,206.
Okay.
So it's about $30,000 difference.
So I think what Mr. Swayze was referring to was the fact that, and there are a lot of people in Newton that have mentioned this to me, is that as student population goes down, they believe so should the budget. And quite frankly, people last year, when they got a tax bill that was lower than it could have been, people really didn't rejoice. They were like, oh, good, for once I don't actually have to scrape it to pay my tax bill. To look at them now and say, well, you know, the money you didn't have to spend last year, you're going to be using it this year. I look at these numbers, quite frankly, and I look at the town presentation. The town of Newton's operating budget represents a 1.4 cent per thousand increase on the tax rate. That means an additional, for a $300,000 home, it's about $4.02. I mean, $4.02. Not per day, not per week, not per month, per year.
Okay, Jim, it's only a 1.4 cent, you know what, from that I took it from the typo that was on the sheet.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
So I used the 14 cents.
Oh, okay, no,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
it's 1.4 cents.
Okay, so the 609 is really, including passing Newton, is really about $615 maybe? 612, 13? If everything passed?
I don't have your figures, so I don't.
Well, I'm using Charlton's figure of $609 if everything passes in
109
the
plus
district.
$4, yeah.
I would have, it came out to, if everything passed in Newton, it would be 13.4 cents.
13,
I don't have my Newton stuff here. That one's stuck in my mind because we had to correct it.
So just for purposes of discussion, can we
Yeah.
use 620 for Newton for a $300,000 house? 609 plus 11, I don't know.
Oh, no, it would be 609 plus 11 times 3, so
Oh,
it'd be
plus
33.
33,
Yeah.
okay. So it'd be about 640?
Call it 650, because I don't
Okay,
have the
call it
paperwork.
650. Okay, and out of that, 381 is what I'm saying was an extraordinary tax credit that we got last year. So the net increase is about $250 if everything passed. Over 2 years.
See, it's the over 2 years part that people don't look at as being over 2 years. People are looking at it saying, my last tax bill was, this year's tax bill is.
Got it?
The difference between the two is what I have to, because, and this is just from, as a selectman, you see the people that are using like the food pantry, the welfare slips that we have to pay. The number of people has not diminished that are using either one of those options. I mean, Newton's fuel oil, we used every penny that was budgeted for fuel oil last year. You know, we're seeing an improvement in the economy, but we're not seeing the improvement locally.
I do think that it's important to look that the actual poverty rate in Newton is about 9%, and in Kingston is about 5%.
Exactly.
Newton has a little higher poverty rate than Kingston does. However, the majority of the people are not in poverty. And so, I mean, I think that we have to look at that as, you know, is this worth it? It isn't a matter of, can we keep people from, you know, and I'm sorry, very sorry for the few people who cannot afford some of these things. I'm sorry for them around the nation. But the thing is, the majority of the people, the decision that has to be made is this a budget which makes sense? Are these expenses which make sense? Are we properly supporting our community to grow and to build and to develop and to take care of the kids and to take care of our community and our property values by having good schools? And I can't be persuaded that somebody who's on food stamps, who may or may not even be in subsidized housing, you know.
Let me get just one thing straight.
Yeah.
These are not people that are eligible for food stamps. These are people who, through no fault of their own, have, because in New Hampshire, in order to get food stamps, it's a approximately 6-week process. These are people who, gee, I had to fill the oil tank an extra time because it was cold, and I've maxed out my credit card at DeMoula's, so I have to go to the food pantry. These are not people that are eligible for food stamps. These are not people that are eligible for state aid or BTAE. These are people that fit, yeah, we have 9% of people in Newton are eligible for food stamps, free and reduced lunch, all sorts of freebies. There's another probably 10% of the people in Newton that if it weren't for the food pantry, would go without food.
Okay, good.
And most of them are not parents of children. They are parents of, they may have kids in college, they're paying for college expenses. They may be senior citizens. Because Lord knows I take care of several senior citizens in town that I look over, and I look at half of the people. I go, you know, actually I did it tonight. I went to 2 of them and I went, you all set for the snowstorm? Do you need anything at DeMoula's? I look at this budget and I go, this is not lean. This is not bare bones. I can show you bare bones because I can take you into houses in Newton and open a cabinet and there might be 2 cans of tuna fish and a package of macaroni.
Okay, get it. Yes, Cheryl?
I'd just like to say, I think this is worthy conversation. It would be nice to have more data at a time before now. These are discussions that we should have had before we put this number before the public. I am going to request to move the question at this point.
Can I don't
We
want-
just got a request to move the question.
Can I address what you just said, Cheryl?
I'm not the chairperson.
She's,
Everybody, there was to move the question, is it okay if Charlton makes a comment? I don't want to be out of order. Okay, Charlton.
she's right about getting this information, and we still, because I got it at the public session, it's like, wow, too late. You're right, we're getting it way too late, all this stuff, we're getting way too late, and even the default number, the budget committee can't even ask any questions on the default number, because we're now precluded from asking any questions. We don't even know how that, we can't even question the default number, so I totally agree with you, Cheryl. Way too late in the process, this stuff is being dumped on us, that's all.
I didn't say being dumped on.
Well, I mean, that's my,
That was your, that was your.
It's being
that was your
brought out way
addition.
too late. Brought out, yeah. Okay, thank you for that indulgence.
Okay. So we're moving the question. All those in favor of the proposed budget of $35,887,933, please say aye. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, and opposed? It'd be 3 opposed. And if you could note down Mr. Kozak, Mr. Swayze, and Mr. Doggett, so that we have the count.
I've been
Okay.
trying to ask, and I apologize, but I need to know, can you unplug your computer and plug it back in? I'm trying to get I'm sorry, I meant the projector cord.
Oh.
I apologize. I did say unplug, which I would define as turn the power off.
For how long?
I just reboot your computer and plug it.
Reboot the computer, or?
Turn your computer back. Is your computer back on already?
Well, my computer didn't go off.
Oh, it didn't? Okay, so just plug the projector cable back in. Scott thinks that there may be a problem with the projector cable.
I have a procedural question too, when you're ready.
Sure, what's that?
Does the representative from the school board get 2 votes on the budget?
No. Yes, he gets a vote as a member of this budget
I don't
committee.
think that's,
It's
can I
it's the
finish my
law.
sentence?
Yes, you can.
Thank
Can you be polite?
Well, you interrupted me, I didn't interrupt
I
you.
apologize.
Okay. It doesn't seem that that's the case, where the case should be that it's, in this country, it's always one man, one vote. And you get the vote on the budget here and in the school board. And if it's a law, please give me the statutory citation for that. Thank you.
I can tell you.
Go ahead, I'm ready to write it down.
I've only got 1 vote. I wasn't here at the town when they voted.
Wow, that's a Clintonism.
However,
statute? What's the
RSA 32 has, the school board has 1 representative who is a voting representative of the budget committee.
He is a required member of the budget committee
Yeah.
by law.
Yep. And the
And
budget
voting.
committee is composed of the same number as the school board, plus the 1 member of the budget committee coming from the school board.
That's
So yes, he has a vote here.
So that statute will say that the school board representative is a voting member?
Yes, it
Yes.
does.
Okay, I'll look it up.
I'm getting the statute for you. I'll
I'll
find it.
get it.
Well, I was trying to be helpful.
Okay,
I usually have it with me, but I didn't.
Yeah, it's
bring it
okay.
tonight.
I'm getting it.
having dealt with that one, we can move on to Article 4, which is the professional staff collective bargaining agreement.
Can I
Yes.
finally say one piece?
Oh,
And
yes.
If y'all don't want me to talk, I don't have to be here, but I do need to at least express some information. I don't know what my purpose is here. That's my question. Is my
What-
purpose
What is
here
it?
to only answer questions when I'm asked or to clarify information? What is my purpose? Because I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to help you all, but I will go home if I'm not allowed to speak, to be honest with you. No, I'm being sincere. I've been shut down multiple times at this meeting and told that it's a BudCom meeting, and frankly, Mr. Swayze, I'm fine with that, but I will go home and be with my 10-year-old boy who's got the flu, and I came here to be on this meeting to help you tonight.
We appreciate your being here. Is there something on the operating budget that we missed that,
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that the whole discussion about the operating budget wasn't about the operating budget. it was about 4 different articles. And as a matter of procedure, you as a group are tasked with discussing these individually. And the actual increase on the operating budget is 2.1%, which is less than CPI. And we're going to open the doors with less than what we need just to pay the fuel bills and the special ed costs. And the difference between the default and the operating budget, which was the first article that was supposed to be discussed by this committee, is very short memories that we just gave back $1.5 million to the community and cut 7 teaching positions over the course of my tenure here. Now, we told everyone in the fall that if you didn't retain the amount of money that is allowed by state law to offset taxation, that this very issue was going to occur. That burden is on this committee and the school board. You own that. So don't blame the school administration. We worked hard to give you a 2.1% budget. And that's the budget. Now, the teacher negotiations I will discuss at the next item. But I would really appreciate it if people wouldn't lump together multiple items into one discussion, because the voters don't vote on all of them at once. They vote on them separately. And I had some voters on Facebook recently ask me very carefully, what do I do? And I said, if you can't afford a $600 increase on your taxes, please vote for the teacher's contract. That's what I said. The professional staff contract is critical. And yes, we had a number of people retire. And honestly, last year we probably lost 3 or 4 people because of salaries, not because of retirements or this, that, and the other. So your point is 100% valid. Mr. Swayze, I validated your numbers. They are correct for a $300,000 home. I wanted you to hear that I was supporting your perspective that it would be $609. But I just want you all to understand that it's not fair to clump, none of this can be clumped together into one thing. We have 5 campuses. Cheryl was 100% correct. We're running 5 campuses for 1,600 students. That is not fiscally smart. It's not. It's really, really not good, because we're paying for every component of those campuses. But to be honest with you, if you want to know how to fix it, Mr. Swayze, and lower the taxes or keep things level as we move forward, as I discussed with you the other day, the answer is truly to build a K-6 building and have two schools in the whole district, because we're paying a fortune for everything else around it. We've got a tiny elementary school in Newton, and we've got a medium to small elementary school in Kingston. The problem is both of those facilities are in good shape, so it doesn't make any sense to close either facility. So then that lends us to have the conversation about another article item that I'll talk about in a minute when it comes up, if you would let me, because I want to help you to understand that there is a plan embedded right in these articles of agreement to address the very issues that we just spent 50 minutes talking about as a clump. Now, I'm not asking you all to comment on what I just said. I'm just sharing with you that I'm happy to help you, but please, if you could take them one article at a time, I can help you with one article at a time. I can't do the whole thing all at once. There's a lot of work going on here, folks, and the administration has been a really great team trying to help. We all recognize that there are people who are struggling with their taxes, and we have made significant reductions. I mean, cutting 7 teachers in 1 year is huge. Looking at closing an entire school within 2 years of being superintendent here is very risky, right? Because people love their neighborhood schools. But if we're going to have a conversation about it, we need to hear from the community. Is the community's will to lower their taxes or keep their neighborhood schools? And that's why there's an article to address that right in this warrant. So please, if we could take them one warrant item at a time, I'm happy to help you. But otherwise, I sincerely, I'm not trying to be a jerk or be rude or anything. If you don't want me to talk, I would go home.
Thank you. One of the things that, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, but if I could speak?
Go ahead.
One of the things that, in response to what you just said, the difference between the operating budget and the default budget for a $300,000 house in Newton would be $72.
Yes.
And the difference between the operating budget and the default budget in Kingston for a $300,000 house would be $54. So, getting back to
Estimated.
exactly what
All
you're
of this
saying.
is estimated. I want to remind everyone that all of these revenues, all of it is estimated. Kingston's slated to have a number of housing units open. Their taxes could look very different, but they're not available today. We have to base these estimates off last year's real estate numbers. right? So these are all estimates.
So moving on, if we finished that one, do you have a
I
comment?
thought we had finished it, but
We
now we
have-
seem to be back onto the subject again.
We're on the subject now of Article 4, if that's okay with you?
It's all right with me.
Yes.
One question.
But I
Hang
do want to say something.
I just recognized you. Yes?
Okay.
Just in response, or Mr. Ambrose's question, are we going to ask him to stay for the entire session tonight? Because if we're not, I have a question that's coming up for a later article, and if he's going to be allowed to leave, I would like to ask if we could move to that article so I can ask him his question.
First of all, we don't force him to stay. He's not required to be here at all. It's
Oh, no,
our
I'm
privilege
happy
to
to
have
help
him here, and we appreciate your time being here. I hope you'll stay.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay if I can help, but
What I'm trying to do, Tom, is to have the Budget Committee people weigh in, and then have you weigh in response to them. I'm not trying to shut you down, and I hope that you don't hear that. I do know that you've heard some people say it's a Budget Committee meeting, not something. That's not the way it is. We do respect your being here. We
Okay.
thank you very much for
Thank you.
being here.
Well, don't speak for me,
I'm speaking as the chairman of this group.
and you're speaking for yourself.
I'm speaking as a chairman.
Well,
Do we
that's-
need a motion that it's okay for Mr. Ambrose to speak and to share? I mean, really, is that what you want?
I'd like to address it.
I
Unless-
think we're going to move on now.
Okay.
Could I have a motion on the professional staff contract, collective bargaining agreement, please?
Can I just, point of order before you do that?
Yes.
To say that I am recusing myself from this discussion and from the vote.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement, please?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So it's open for discussion about the collective bargaining agreement. The collective bargaining agreement is estimated to have a tax impact of 34 cents in Kingston and 44 cents in Newton.
What was that?
Any
I'm
comments
sorry,
from anyone?
34 and what?
34 in Kingston and 44 in Newton.
44. Thank you.
we can send you a copy of the warrants with those figures on them if you'd
I
like,
have 'em right
Sandra.
here.
Just so that you don't have to write it all down, we can send it to you.
Yeah, they're on the warrants.
Yeah, they're right on the
Have it.
warrants for you. Just offering to help, I know it's hard to
Yes,
scribe, I do it
Instead of
too.
reading, I'm
Yeah,
trying to write.
okay, all right, just wanted to offer to help.
But that
Yeah.
would be fine.
Yes, Charlton.
I'll go first. I handed out to everybody, it's a letter dated October 17th that we all passed unanimously. And this proposed contract and the support staff, I'm going to talk about it, does not come even close to what we asked or what we indicated. I mean, this is just, I don't know what we negotiated. I mean, I've heard people say these so-called negotiations are basically an insult to what everybody else is paying in this world. Larry may not like private industry, but that's,
Oh, I do like private.
I love private industry, but anyways, it's not even,
It's not what
the
he said.
healthcare contributions are
That we
not
are not a
even
business.
close to what people are paying in private industry. And I would tell anybody, and I'm going to speak to this, that when you vote on this warrant article, ask yourself, is this what you pay? Just ask yourself, is this what you pay? All I'm asking for was parity. And I meant to get it, and I didn't get it. I didn't get a chance to look it up. But the town employees of Kingston and Newton, that's our firemen, that's our policemen, that's our support staffs, who are as worthy and deserving as anybody. They don't pay 10%, 11% on the health insurance. They're paying, I believe I looked, last time it was 20 or 25%.
25 in Newton.
25% in Newton. Okay?
That's true.
Hey,
No, the voters need to send a message. You talk about, well, the voters, we should send a message, this is unacceptable, you need to go back and figure something out. So I would say, I would ask this committee to vote no on this professional staff collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you. I'd like to just say that when we sent this letter on October 17th, we said, as regards pay raises contained in this contract, an ongoing step plus a percentage is excessive. We feel that 1 step per year over the life of the contract is fair and adequate. Mr. Doggett told us that the average step is about 3.5%. And so the intent would be that there be no more than a 3.5% increase. This increase is actually 3.38%, including the steps, the cost of living, FICA, retirement, and the insurance adjustment, of which is just 1%. It's not a 75% insurance adjustment. It just goes to 89%, but it is a 3.38. So there is some amount of compliance with the request that we had in this letter. I just want to point that out.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know who did your numbers, however, I did, as everybody received an email from me, I went through the matrix. The steps in the matrix average between 2.75 and 3.5%. Therefore, a step increase is automatically, I chose 2.25, which seems to be the aggregate median. On top of that 3.25, they're getting an additional, in the first year, 2.2%, and in the second year, 2%. Therefore, the full aggregate would be, in the first year, using my median, would be a 5.45% increase, and in the second year would be a 4.25% increase.
Got it. The thing is that the numbers that I shared with you came from Michelle, our business administrator, and they are based on the current staffing. And not every person is on an average, 3.5% matrix and stuff. So just doing those numbers, they're not actual. The actual numbers based on current staffing is 3.38% increase. And that's the number that's in the warrant article.
That's if you take the number in the warrant article for pay raises and divide it by our total professional staff.
No, it's a little more sophisticated than that. Tom, would you address that?
I'll address it the best I can. Michelle really needs to address it. And Larry, feel free to, Larry was part of our team. The average raise roughly, Annie's correct. That's all I'm going to say. Annie has the right numbers.
And they weren't my numbers. They're from...
From Michelle.
They're from Michelle.
Which I checked, verified, double-checked, and talked to her about at length. And sat in many, many negotiations looking at those numbers.
Many.
For hours.
Many negotiations. This wasn't something that was done overnight.
I also want to be clear that the
Trust
The
me.
results.
You're talking to the person who actually wrote this damn matrix.
Yeah, come on.
That's fine.
So then
That's the matrix that I made. It was 3.5%.
Then why didn't you change it when you did it?
Because when that matrix was enacted, we were looking at between 10 and 15% interest rates being paid on savings accounts, and that made sense. However, it has never changed since then. However,
And that's why we did not touch it.
What's being manipulated here is the number of people that have gone off matrix, who are only getting $1,000 per year increase, is lowering the average. But every person that is on this matrix, which I contend is probably the bulk of the staff, is still going to be receiving quite substantial pay raises. However, we used to get the matrix, and there would be sub-numbers telling us how many people were on each step. Not necessarily who, but how many. We never see it anymore.
You
Why didn't you ask for that?
it, Jim.
You didn't ask for that.
You didn't ask for it. Why didn't you ask for it? If that would be something that would open our eyes to what the truth is here, why didn't you ask for it?
Yeah.
I would
Because
like
quite
to
honestly,
see
we
that.
had one round of questions.
Yeah.
We hadn't even gotten to the contract, We were working on budget.
How can you ask a
We
question
got
when you don't
this.
even know what the
I got
question's gonna
this this
be?
evening.
You cannot get a copy of the
Excuse me,
contract
please.
until,
Hey, everybody, please. Jim, you didn't ask the question. If that's something you've been aware of, that you knew we always used to get, then with all your years of experience, why didn't you ask for it? It isn't something that came out of left field like it would for me, who's never seen it.
Because I didn't see until after I sent out an email this past week stating what I believe to be correct, with a sentence in there, let me know if I'm wrong. I've received no information other than a matrix showing the percentage of increases. I received that 2 days before the meeting.
That's when we got it. Why didn't you ask a follow-up question if you had one?
Because quite honestly, I run a business in town,
Okay, you didn't have time.
and yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Hey,
Yes, Charlton.
All right. The other part that I have, the problem I have with this is that apparently, as I understand it, that's the Budget Committee and the public is not allowed to see the contract in whole.
that's unlegal.
Now, let me finish. Anything like that, even if it is legal, and I'd like to see the statutes or cites on that, can be waived by the parties. The school district can waive it and the teachers can waive it to make that contract public. This harkens back to the classic of Nancy Pelosi. You have to pass this and fund it in order to see what's in it. I was an attorney for more than 30 years, whatever. If someone came into my office and said, Charlton, I'm going to hire this guy, I'm going to give him $1 million to do something, and what do you think? I said, well, okay, I understand what you're doing and whatnot, and I know that's a business decision. What's the terms of the contract? Oh, you can't see it until you pay it. What? I'd be going, what? You left your senses? You can't see the contract until you fund it or until you agree to pay for it. I can't imagine anybody with barnyard sense would say, oh, that's a cool idea. Let me just agree to pay $1,038,000.
What?
But I don't know what the terms are. What little nuggets are hidden in there, in this contract? For instance, I know somebody's been asking, is there an evergreen clause? And what we get for an answer is, I don't know, or I can't tell you. Man, is that important. We fought a few years ago, tooth and nail, to get rid of that evergreen clause. I don't even know now if it's resurfaced, if it's in there. I'm told, you can't see it. Just trust me. No.
Can I tell them?
Do not vote.
You can't, I'm sorry.
For a contract that you can't read. I just can't imagine anyone doing such a thing. I can't. I just can't.
I need to speak. For the record, for the public on the TV, I do not agree and have legal guidance that Mr. Swayze is incorrect. And I would be happy to have our attorney provide the RSAs to the BudCom that direct that. He told us not to share it. He told us that the BudCom has the right to know the financial parts and that that's the part that the community votes on. Everything else is confidential and it's teacher negotiations. So I just want the public to know that I did request per BudCom. The BudCom asked me, can you share the language? And I said, I don't know. I'll ask. And I was told no. So I'm doing what I was told.
I believe
and
that
I
you-
sincerely will ask what the RSA is because you have a right to know that. But I do also want to be clear that I am a little bit confused because my understanding that the role of the BudCom is to review the financial implications of the teacher contracts and the budget as a global indicator of what the ability of the taxpayers is to pay in light of the community budgets, right? So the teacher's contract is a 1.75% raise with a reduction in health care plus steps. Now, I'm not going to get into it with Mr. Doggett because I do recognize his history here in the district. I'm simply reporting that our business administrator, whose job is to manage these numbers, told me that with the 1.75% increase, minus the change in healthcare, the average was about 3.3% total. Now, there are many people that are off step in our district, so they're only getting $1,000. Many people. And if you would like a grid that shows that, no problem. No one asked. We're happy to help you.
It used to actually be.
I'm not
printed in
disputing the
contract.
fact that you get that, that's right.
That's all I have to say.
But as a basically legal tenant, parties can waive requirements.
That may be so, but I can assure you.
That's
Yeah.
quick. And I'm not asking just for the budget committee, I'm asking as a citizen,
Yeah.
that the citizens have a right to see this entire contract and don't vote. I can't imagine you, Mr. Ambrose, would ever approve a contract and say, go to the school board and say, just pay for this, you don't need to see the contract.
Well, honestly, Mr. Swayze, in my community, I trust the administration that negotiates the contracts, and
Well.
I feel bad for our teachers because they really, compared to the average in the area, they are paid very low. But their health insurance is high compared to the area. And so
And-
that's why we made movement in that area.
And there could be things in that contract, such as the evergreen clause, that does have a substantial financial impact.
I understand that completely, sir. I can't
Yeah.
comment on that except
I
to
know,
agree
see,
that that would be
we can't know
a significant financial issue.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
I know.
Yes, Sandy,
I'd like to call for the question on Article 4.
okay.
What did you say?
She wants to call the question.
Move the vote, yeah.
So all those in favor of recommending the,
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I just
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
say-
He did have his hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't have a...
I apologize, I missed
Okay.
you.
I did want to say, that was one of my real sore points about the cost of health insurance. And I agree with Charlton, I think that I wanted to see an increase, and I'm sure that would affect everybody in the school system, and that's what I'm disappointed in. The 1% to me is just not satisfactory.
I know you moved the vote, but I just want to say that having been a teacher who had significant changes in health insurance over a 3-year period, we negotiated 5% per year plus steps over a 3-year period, 15% to give up about 5% in healthcare.
Cost of living, 5%?
No, 5% on the whole contract, 5% increase plus steps for 3 years to give up 5% on healthcare. So I would just counter that, having been involved in negotiations in the past, that getting a 2% change for roughly a 2% change in the total matrix, 8 plus steps, I just want to use your language, because I've never used that language until I
That's
came
the
here.
language of the contract.
Yeah, I know, but that's not, I'm just simply sharing with you that the language was not familiar to me.
Okay.
I'm not saying to you that I have a problem with it. I'm saying it's not the language that I'm used to. The language that I'm used to is that you talk about the whole percentage. You don't, the steps just happen. So I'm fine with that, but I have to get used to saying it. So here in New Hampshire, the way it's explained to people is you talk about the percentage plus the steps. Fine. I'm saying that in the past, I've seen districts pay over a 3-year period 5% per year, 15% to get 5% on health care. Your team, which included some folks in this room who are not sitting at the table, were fantastic at getting 2% for 1.75 and 2.25. If you think as a community member you're going to get more than that, your expectations are too high. I'm just trying to help you. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get it. You'll get a no deal. They'll keep the 90% and stay where they are. I'm just telling you honestly, and having been a teacher, if I were on the other side, that's what I would say. Fine, no deal. Right? And so we have to realize that this was a very difficult negotiation that, in my opinion, was a success because we broke the 90 ceiling, the 90%, because that has been held on to for decades, firmly. So that's just my feedback. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just trying to help you out, Jack.
Okay, so, yes.
I was going to say, I had my hand up too when.
I'm
when you
sorry, I
called on her.
missed it.
And I was going to echo kind of what, I was going to say kind of what Mr. Ambrose was saying, that I know that we had asked for, as a committee, for the negotiating team to try to increase the contribution for healthcare. And my question was going to be, when is the last time you saw that go down? When's the last time we saw that trend down? The fact that they were able to break that ceiling and get them to say, this is what's more reasonable, this is what's equitable given our town employees, is a step in the right direction. Like everything that happens around here, it happens in baby steps. And I think that we need to trust that these negotiations were conducted in good faith and that it was a difficult process and that they did come to an agreement for the two collective bargaining units. Whether you like unions or not, it's how the compensation happens in public schools or in most public schools. And I think that they should be commended for, the negotiating team and the teachers' representatives should be commended for hearing our concerns and for moving in that direction. Baby steps as they may be.
Okay, thank you. So the question has been moved. We've had several comments since then, but I'd like to ask all those in favor of recommending the professional staff collective bargaining agreement, please raise your hands. And so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and opposed would be 1, 2, 3, which is Kozak, Swayze, and Doggett, and recused is Mrs. Gannon. Okay.
Hey, can I make a suggestion? I think Mr. LeBlanc's here to talk about the hockey team. He may not want to sit through the rest of this call to gob. So, would you like us to move you up?
Well, I would love it.
Yes. On Article, what are we, Article 11?
Article 11.
Yes.
Are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'm making a motion to
Second.
That's fine, that's good. All in favor? Okay. So this is about the Sanborn ice hockey team. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
So I wrote something down so I didn't kind of not, I'm John LeBlanc from Kingston. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I have 2 comments. One's a little late, but I hope you support the, I would like to hope you support the.
I'm sorry.
Can you state his name for the record?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes, sorry, John LeBlanc from Kingston.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll skip over my first comment because it's about articles you haven't discussed yet, one you're in the process of. I don't want to speak out of turn. But my second comment is I would like to make a request at the Budget Committee to support the Article number 11, the partial funding of the Sanborn Ice Hockey Program. I've got up and spoken a few times about the program. It's been going for 7 years. We have a varsity program for the last 5. It's been totally self-funded, ice time, including paying all the coaches and the transportation and basically all the fees that go along with running an NHIAA-recognized high school sport. And this article was written by myself and others on the Ice Hockey Boosters Board, and specifically is not asking for ice time funding in this article. It's clearly stated, hopefully this time, that it's clear that the Boosters organization will continue to pay for the ice time and continue to fundraise, and is only asking for the district to fund the normal the normal sports teams costs like transportation and so forth. So at last week's hearing, which I attended, there was some discussions about all the monetary articles, obviously, as well as the hockey article. And during some of that discussion, a suggestion was made that maybe the Boosters Board would consider writing a letter and stating basically that the Boosters would never come forward with a request to fund ice time. So at the behest of that suggestion, I emailed, we had an email conversation through the Ice Hockey Boosters Board, and ultimately, after some discussion, decided against the board signing that letter. And I have 3 reasons why the board did not feel drafting this letter was appropriate. The first reason was we felt that the article as it is written currently should be, I guess, voted on by the Budget Committee the way it stands. On the merits of that article, is the Budget Committee in favor of that article, and that having some other outside document didn't make sense to us to have a promise for some future board, not doing this, not coming forward and asking for ice time. Another reason was the board felt uncomfortable about making such a letter that we can't forecast the future. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, 10 years down the road. Is this district going to combine with other districts? Are we going to all of a sudden have an influx of many more students? So we felt the uncertainty there. We didn't want to tie the hands of that future hockey boards that, maybe there is some reason out there that they want to ask for this. And I guess ultimately the third reason is, in order for ice time to be funded, if this article passes, in the future, in order for ice time to be funded, either the school board and administration would have to ask for the funding, put it in a budget, it would go to the budget committee, you would talk about it, or a warrant article would have to be written, and that warrant article would have to pass the voters. I don't see either of those things happening in the future, because this is, again, I've already spoken previously that I felt ice time was too big of an ask for a small group such as the hockey team. It would be inordinate, too much per student spending on one single sport, with ice time included. And I don't think any board will come forward requesting that. But again, we didn't feel it was appropriate from a board perspective to write a letter for future boards that we're not going to be part of potentially. This board is mostly parent associated. New parents are going to come along. They're going to have new ideas or different things, and we just didn't feel it was appropriate for us to do that. So, and I know that's not what you wanted to hear. I'm sure a few of you, but I still hope you can review the article for the merit of having another extracurricular activity that our students are participating in, and are not only the ones that participate, but the rest of the student body attending the games and increasing the student, school pride and rooting for that ice hockey team. And it's a wonderful sport, keeps kids active, keeps them out of trouble. I still play to this day. I wouldn't say it's a lifetime sport.
Keeps you out of trouble too, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a lifetime sport. I mean, I'm sure I got a upper window that I'm going to stop playing, but I think it's great for the students to be able to participate in any extracurricular, and the more we have, I think the better we are as a school district. So, thank you.
Okay.
Are we going to ask him questions at all? I just wasn't sure process-wise.
Yeah, I think first of all, I think what I'd like to do is to have a motion from the committee to recommend, and then we can ask questions of Mr. LeBlanc and discuss amongst ourselves. Could I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Thank you. And a second? Second. Okay, Mary seconded. Okay, please. Questions? Oh.
Charlton's first.
I'm always willing to start. Thanks, John. I completely understand why you don't want to do the letter. After we talked at the public hearing, the more I thought about it, I said, no, they shouldn't do that based on past history alone. So you were right to come to that decision. This one's become a tough one for me. It really has, believe it or not. I don't like seeing the hockey players becoming a pawn. And I think in some respects they are at this point. And please, you weren't involved initially in this, so there's no personal responsibility. You and I have talked about that. And I want everybody on the board to know that Mr. Blank wasn't involved in the initial issues regarding this program. The problem is, and the problem that I still have is that the people that came in made a representation, and it was fully suspected that there was more behind it. And the school boards since then and the budget committee since then have all said no. And boy, there's been some previous school boards that would give anybody anything. They would not do this because they said, you made us a promise. They did not want to start a new program. And that's where we are. Do we fund a new program? And Mr. Ambrose and I know we talk about this all the time. My exponentially growing government agencies. Right. And that's what happens here. And you know, I told you, I played hockey, I was a pretty good hockey player, but that's not the point. You know, it says in here, a coaching stipend. So now, you know, in comes a future coaching position to be paid for, and an assistant coach, and a JV program. And I don't even know whether under the federal law, you'd have to offer a girls' hockey program if that was insisted on, and here we go. I don't know what to do at this point, you know? I can't pry $2,000 out of these people for a bass program, for a bass team. You know? I'm conflicted, I really am about this at this point. You know, I guess it'll never happen if somebody might have fessed up to the fact that what they really intended in the beginning, it might help, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I just go back to the previous school boards and whatnot that were very liberal, very easygoing, that just wouldn't go along with this because they said, you told us no, we did not want to get involved with a new athletic program. That's all I have to say about the whole subject to everybody here. I'm really, at this point, conflicted about it. I probably will say no, but.
Okay, so, Mr. Ambrose, you?
Yeah, I was just asking, just to clarify, the part that, I've kind of come out in support of this warrant simply because of the way it's written. It says to fund non-ice time activities, am I correct?
Correct.
The exact wording is to fund non-ice time activities, because as an administration, I would not put in the budget anything that had been voted on by a warrant article. I don't, as long as I'm superintendent, I don't plan to put ice time in the budget, because it was clearly on the warrant, non-ice time. So I just want everyone to know that that was kind of important, because I'd like a ski team, and lift tickets are expensive, and I understand that, you know, there's a lot of things our kids could do that we're not doing right now, and that's part of what I've talked about for the future, but not until we can figure out some of these other big issues we've talked about tonight. And so Charles and I too was conflicted with the issue, but I want people to know that the non-ice time expenditures part was important. Just want that to stay in the forefront.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I too am conflicted. And I asked this question at the public hearing, and my concern is that typically warrant articles are for a one-year expenditure. And I think voters might read this to think that the $10,000 is coming out from next year's, it being asked to put into next year's budget. It doesn't clearly state here that this is going to be an ongoing cost. Sanborn eyes, that was what got us in trouble with those contracts. So I'm not going to support this, but I would suggest if it does not pass this year, to add the wording, and this will become an ongoing expense in subsequent years that the team is in place, so that people understand that this, you're asking for this money to be included in the next operating budget, that you're not going to come back every year and ask for that $10,000.
Yes.
I'm not conflicted.
Good for you.
I actually was in the past until I learned some things. And it has me looking at the entire athletic program together. I fear that a warrant article like this, the exposure of the school district, because roughly a year ago, I spent quite a bit of time being lectured to, not by hockey people, but by medical people. Hockey is has a fairly good number of concussions and sports injuries. And right at the moment, New Hampshire is having an opioid issue. The primary reason for opioid use amongst youth is high school sports is where they get their first prescription. And then it turns into abuse. Now, the number of people that I personally know that have lost children to opioid overdoses that started with, well, you know, ended up with a sprained ankle from a football, and we're not even getting in there, keep that off the the video because hockey and football are the two largest contributors to those two areas of major concern. I mean, we're only now finding out about football players receiving concussions 20 years ago and what it is doing to them. So you couple that, I mean, I've heard several times this evening that these children are our most precious resource. We're sending them out to basically slaughter each other, but the ramifications won't be felt for another 20 years. Or we're sending them out, we're allowing them to get, I mean, we're not allowing them, but we're putting them in an area where injuries are quite common. Opioids are the pain release, and addiction is the potential price that they will pay. I can't support something, I mean, the exposure, I don't know if people know, but right at the moment, Rite Aid is being sued by a couple of, I almost said junkies, addicts, who are complaining that their Rite Aid prescription, Rite Aid canceled people's prescriptions after so many uses, drove them to heroin. What kind of exposure are we setting up? I mean, this is something the Budget Committee really needs to be concerned about. What kind of exposure of the school district resources are we setting up here? All we need is to have one person who in the past 7 years got a concussion and now has a cerebral hemorrhage or had a sprained ankle and is now on heroin, coming back saying that because the school district, we know the argument, the school district is the deep pocket. We need to protect our children and our resources.
Mary?
Got a couple of things. I am conflicted about this. Last year I was on the fence. I contributed to the GoFundMe because I am a big sports enthusiast. I've got a bunch of kids that play a bunch of sports, and a lot of my kids have pay to play sports up through, because it's weird stuff that they play, rugby and, swimming and other things that we need to shell out money for. And I've always felt that, if somebody wants to do those things at a higher level, then maybe they can self-fund, which these guys have done and done very well. I'd like to speak to Mr. Doggett's point. In fact, it is women soccer players who have the highest risk of concussion.
Like I said, I'm not touching the.
And as a parent of a lot of crash and bang boys, my twins alone have had 7 concussions between them in the last 3 years. And the ramifications are very serious. Consequences are far-reaching, like more than you can imagine. But the issue here is that there's inherent risk in crossing the street, okay? These kids who play come and they know the risk, and I don't foresee hockey players being any more addicted to painkillers than I do, young women who play soccer, or people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time. So with all due respect, I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not we agree to fund a sport. I will tell you that I am leaning towards supporting this year because I've heard the clarifying intent for it to fund the same things that are afforded to other sports, the coaching, the transportation, the uniforms, the basic privileges that are afforded to other teams. I too am concerned about the creep factor. We saw it happen with football. It happens with a bunch of stuff. I will tell you that I would love to see the parents and the kids out there lobbying. My family was one that lobbied for football at Sanborn. We were out on the weekends, the kids were out, they were going door to door. I was at both polls last year in Newton and in Kingston, and on Election Day, in that snowstorm, there was one family from hockey that I saw at the Newton polls, and it was a young man with his parents. That was the first sign of any kind of indication that I saw of outreach to part of the general public, and I think there is some responsibility for that. You know, this is the third time it's come up on the warrant, and I think people recognize and understand the passion and the dedication and all of that, but just some advice is that you get a grassroots effort out there to really help move this thing forward, and I think it would really help your cause.
That's great. Any other comments? Yes, Sandy?
Of the 18 players that you are here to represent.
14.
14? Oh, I thought it was 18.
I believe we had 18 last year, and we have 14 this year, so a little bit.
Probably in my notes, I just didn't reread it. But how many of them had a concussion?
I actually don't know. My son's no longer in the program, so I'm still on the board.
Are you perceiving this as an issue?
I've heard of colds and, kind of a virus going through the team, but I haven't heard of anyone this year getting injured in a concussion. Last year, I believe we had one student who got injured during a game. I don't know if he ended up having a concussion, but he definitely had to go to the hospital from the game. So, I mean, it's a contact sport. But it just, to let you know, that we're under the school, we are an official school sport.
Right.
We just happen to be funded by parents and fundraisers. So this sport is a recognized high school sport, NHIA recognized, so it's voting for this warrant article, I don't believe changes anything from a, if you will, liability point of view, but if you're concerned about, kids getting addicted, then obviously that's a different thing, but that's not going to change. We're still going to try to continue to support this going forward, whether or not this article passes, obviously.
Yes, Jack?
John, how are these coaches paid? Are they volunteers or?
No, we pay them based on the stipends that are in the collective bargaining agreement, just like, so our fundraising is going to help pay we have a head coach, I believe he does take a salary, and
how many staff members?
we have one head coach and one assistant, and I believe the assistant is retiring as of this year. His son's graduating. I believe work has been taking him away from a lot of the time, so I don't know if he's going to be back, so we'll be down to probably one coach.
So is there JV coaches also, or?
No, we have just a varsity program, and no JV coaches, so.
So there's no JV team to speak of?
No, we have 14 kids on the varsity. That's all I don't expect the numbers to ever get big in,
John, I've spoken out against this for the last several years, that you've come up and we've talked on the OQ. Just so you don't know it, I used to coach, John, in youth hockey in Amesbury.
Full disclosure, Jack?
Play with my oldest son.
Yeah, I've tried to work that angle. It hasn't worked yet.
Oh, yeah. I think the non-ice time thing helped you out, though, this year. I would agree with the annual piece, that
that could be added from the floor at the warrant. I believe it can be changed. It's not changing the intent of the article, and even though it's a petition warrant article, I
At the
believe it can be
deliberative, you
changed.
could
Yeah,
add
that's
that.
one of the things I was
Yeah.
thinking is, Cheryl said, it could be amended on the floor.
Yep.
Mr. Ambrose?
Mary, did you have your hand up again?
I
thought I
forget what
saw-
I was going to say,
Okay.
but thank
How
you.
many people are on the bass team?
we don't have a bass team, I don't think, do
Yeah,
we?
you do.
Yeah, there is a basketball.
There is? I don't know that answer, I'm
You
sorry.
don't know? They were
I
in
don't
the
have it
paper.
memorized,
They
Charles.
placed in the finals this year.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, no,
New
I
Hampshire
don't know how many
finals?
people. Wasn't it 8? I remember asking Vicky if it was about 8.
It was less
Rings a
than
bell,
10,
but I can't go on
About
record.
8?
Yeah.
I'd say about 8.
Half the hockey program.
Okay, so,
Interesting.
I want to finish up, but I do agree with Mary that some enthusiasm for the parents that are involved at the voting participation and so forth, even at the deliberative session, would help out tremendously.
okay, I wanted to say that, from my standpoint, I'm very much in favor of the district adding sports and could not support additional sports being added as a part of this proposed budget, because there's so many priorities in the district and there are future, because the taxes are going to be so darn high, on what we do absolutely need to have. But I think sports are kind of very close to a need-to-have thing. I'm in favor of putting it before the voters as a proposal and of recommending it. I think that I happen to have gone to Cornell where ice hockey's huge, and talk about participation in spectator sport and a healthy, wonderful thing. It's more than the 14 kids who are playing. It's just an incredible spectator sport too. So for me, I've got to be in favor of recommending this, and I'm glad it's in the hands of the voters rather than in the hands of the budget committee to add to the budget. And I'm hoping that we can add other sports in the future.
Like bass fishing.
You ready for a vote? Are there any further comments? Okay, all in favor? Please raise your hands. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And opposed? 4. The motion fails by a 4-4 vote. Thank you, John, for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you get
So what goes on the
the
budget?
persons? It goes
I
4 to
didn't get
4.
the people.
Oh, it just says 4-4.
Yeah, it just says 4 to 4. It doesn't say the names.
Doesn't say favor or opposed.
It says not it will say not recommended.
Okay, we have a couple of
Say
more
opposed.
to do. Does anybody need a break for a couple minutes, or are we good to go?
Is there anything you can prioritize so that Tom can,
Well,
address and cut
there's
out
a
if
staff
anything?
agreement.
He wants to get on the
I'll
main
just tell you what
turnpike.
we have left. We have the staff agreement,
Your capital reserve funds.
the capital reserve funds.
Thank you for asking, but I'm happy to stay and help you all out. It's okay.
Thank you. Do you want to take a break, or are we good to go?
Let's go.
Okay, okay.
It's almost 2
Okay.
hours, yeah.
I did. I was hoping that maybe something would happen.
I tried, I shut it off. They think there's something wrong with the cable. They're gonna look at it tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Amy.
Article 6.
All right, the support staff bargaining agreement. Yes, Cheryl?
I just wanted to mention, because we were asking about getting the language in the contract, I'm on the New Hampshire Public Employee Labor Relations Board website, and I can click on Sanborn Regional School District, Personnel Association, and, no, that's Salem, I'm sorry. Sanborn Education Association and Sanborn Education Support Staff, and the contract comes up.
Wait,
Those are the current ones, not
they're
the
right on our
proposed.
website. You don't have to go there.
Yeah.
They're right on, in the policies, they're under H.
So
So
the
if you go to-
one that's been ratified, we can't see?
You cannot have the one that's been ratified.
Not till
It has
voted
been
on.
approved by the people.
It's still,
That's
it's
fine.
still confidential
Okay.
until the
It's
voters vote
still-
on the money
It's
items.
still negotiating.
Trust me, I tried to give it to you. I did, I didn't think it was confidential, I
asked for
didn't
that,
know.
too.
Did
So
you
if we
speak to
could,
Diane?
if we could
I
go
spoke to Diane and Jim.
excuse me, if we could go to having a motion to put this on the floor so that we can have discussion on it, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Larry. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, now we can have discussion on the sports staff contract. Any comments?
Nope.
Nope.
Move the question.
All right, all in favor?
We're voting on warrant article number 6.
Yes. That's 5 in favor and opposed? That's 2.
3.
3. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see. Who was the third? Is that you, Larry?
Jim?
Jack.
Jack, I'm sorry, Jack, I missed it.
No problem.
Okay, so that would be Jack, Charlton, and Jim. Okay, so that's passed by 5 to 3. Next, we have the capital, number 9, the Capital Reserve Fund unanticipated education expenses, to establish a capital reserve fund and then to raise and appropriate $75,000 to be placed in the fund out of the unspent monies at year end. So there's no amount from taxation on this year.
Yes.
Yes. Charlton?
No, nothing.
Okay. Yes.
I was just gonna say, well, it's no,
New taxes.
exactly, while it's no new taxes, in Newton, it will be a 6 cent per thousand.
Are we going to have a motion to discuss?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought
we,
did.
we had
we
one.
did.
No, it was.
Oh, we did? Oh, I apologize.
I move.
Okay, thank you, Sandy,
yeah,
I thought we
that's
did. Okay, so Larry, a motion,
I'll
and,
second.
okay, a second, thank you. Okay, now, I'm sorry.
What this represents is taking 6 cents per thousand from every household in Newton and 5 cents per thousand from every household in Kingston that they will not get back.
Okay, in the tax
Right,
year.
because this is normally money that would go to offset taxes.
Okay.
So when you have on there 700 and something thousand dollars that would anticipated unexpended revenue, that number would be reduced by $75,000 by this. Therefore, the tax rate actually does have to go up to cover that money not received.
The following year.
No, this year.
If needed.
No, the following year.
No, it wouldn't go,
It's
so,
because it's for next year's budget, it's not for this year's budget. Yes, Tom?
I did check with Diane Goro per Jim's request, and I asked her because I agree with your question, that the intent of saying that it would not be returned was to be transparent. This is really hard to be transparent about, even when you're fighting to, because there are rules with which the articles within the warrant are written. I apologize.
God bless.
Diane did not, I asked Diane, could we add the word, I'm sorry, the word new? So no new taxes, because it had already been raised once and appropriated. So she said no, and she said that there really isn't a way to show that because it isn't increasing the taxes the next year, you can't say that it would be 6 cents. You know, I'm assuming your math is right, because I didn't bother to do the math because she said don't do it. But I'm saying that if Jim's math was correct, which I haven't verified, then I asked, could we put a percentage at the bottom to show what it would be returned if it didn't pass? And she said no, because it had already been appropriated in the previous budget. So I did follow up with your question, and I forwarded Annie her response. Now, that doesn't mean that at the public meeting, somebody couldn't say, put the word new in the last sentence. You could do that, but she didn't want us to do it as part of the warrant on her advice. She gave us the exact language from the DRA, and I asked her about the past, and you had asked if she had, or you would recall that she previously advised you. She said she wanted me to give you the caveat that she did not go through previous language and check everything, and that she was recommending this language based on the current recommended DRA language. I didn't want to pay her any more money to go research old things.
The only reason I said that is I was a presenter of the last warrant article similar to this.
Yep.
That was the caveat at the bottom.
Yep.
And it appears on the Newton ballot in accordance with Newton's legal counsel's recommendation and approval of DRA.
Sure. All I'm saying is
So-
that we sent our warrants to DRA and Diane, and she feels that they are the way that they should be.
But it could be amended at the
Sure,
deliberative
sure.
without changing the intent.
I don't think that would change the intent.
I'm sorry, I don't know whose hand was up first. Mary?
Real quickly, I am in support of this article. As a resident of Kingston, I think that our town leaders do a great job by setting up and funding capital reserve funds on a regular basis. It helps to hedge against large installments that, crisis situations that become due. And the voters expect it. They expect to see it on the warrant every year. At least in Kingston, most of these get passed regularly, whether it's for an ambulance or for a fire truck or for some other large expenditure. I think it's a smarter way to do business. I've been asking the district to do this on a regular basis for a number of years. I was glad to see, this is a new one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a new one. But it's a good way to just consistently sock it away and have it there in case of emergency or for a planned, change in the regular education curriculum or program. So I am in support of this. I think it's a great way to, as you pointed out at the public hearing, to get rid of those ebbs and flows and the give and take and just give people a consistent low profile kind of hurt, so that it just happens and it gets tucked away and it's there when we need it. So I'm in support.
Cheryl?
I have two questions and a comment, and I'd like to address this to Mr. Ambrose. You had mentioned in justifying your putting this on the warrant that if perhaps kids moved into the district and we needed to add a new teacher, but not a special ed, because if it was special ed expenses, that would come out of that reserve fund.
Correct.
So can you tell me any other kinds of capital, because it's called a capital reserve fund?
Yeah.
Are teachers considered capital?
Yeah, I asked Michelle
And what
that.
other kinds of things might be included?
Yeah,
in
I mean, I think a great answer to that question, Cheryl, is that what I had outlined in my entry plan was that I was really concerned that I've been put in charge of a $35.5 million organization without clearly defined reserve accounts or emergency accounts, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so special education, as Jim was correct, special education has about $210,000
Yep.
or a little more. And I just wanted everyone to know that you can move regular education money to special ed. You can't go the other way. So what happened last year was that we had a situation where we thought we were going to have 3 out-of-district placements in special ed. And so I froze the budget, which is why y'all got 1.5 million back instead of about 900,000, because kids didn't get what was budgeted for them from February on last year. Luckily, our team worked really hard and the students stayed without going out of district, which I would say is a very positive thing, because accelerated special education expenses is a major problem for us. We have almost 20% of our students.
Yes, but my question is
I know.
about
Let me get there,
general
please. Let me
education.
finish.
Okay.
So my point is that as these numbers are high in those expenditures, the answer to your question is that it could end up going towards special education because it can move from regular ed to special education. It can't move the other way, right? So I think that Charlton asked a great question. People talk about emergencies, and Charlton, I'm using my Charlton voice, right? People talk about emergencies, but they don't really ever give any real examples. So I've been kind of keeping an eye out for real examples to help you to understand that when we have issues with technology and technology goes down, we need money for that, right? So the goal is to adopt a general education capital fund that will allow us to fund emergent needs as they arise with approval from the school board. To offset, what I want to offset and stop having happen is this up and down that we're experiencing right now. You got 1.5 million back, we cut 7 teachers, everyone's taxes went down, and then the next year our revenues are not where they could be, and so you're receiving a bigger tax bill this year. And so the goal of a reserve account like this is to give us the opportunity, should something come up, to offset it without taxing, without changing the way that the ebb and flows of the taxes work. It's kind of, I think of it like diabetes, right? If we can keep the insulin level, then it doesn't happen as intensely. There are many other things that can occur. I mean, we could have a situation where we had a long-term substitute. We could have a really significant health concern that, or the budget. As we pare down the budget and continue to consolidate lines, which we've worked really hard to do, as that occurs, the emergency or reserve funds, the necessity goes up. So if you keep paring the budget down this way, you have to have reserve accounts to cover things, because the reality is that you should have 1.2 to 1.5 million in accounts for a $35 million budget. 4% is what's recommended at a minimum. We have in our reserve accounts tiny, like maybe 1% total or a little more.
So the other reserve accounts we have are special ed.
Yes. I believe there's one in capital.
And I
For
thought we had
facilities.
voted that technology would be included in that one.
We took out, I felt that with the gravity of the budget and the numbers that have been discussed this evening, that we would wait another year for technology. So what we did was
No, in the definition of that fund could be used, I think last year, didn't the warrant article say that we were going to include technology?
I think you're combining, there is a capital reserve fund.
Right.
There's a special education fund, And then there is a capital revolving fund, which is for technology
Right.
facilities. It's the revolving fund that was used for technology last year.
So that,
That's not
so
the
that's my question. You just gave technologies as an example
Sure.
that this fund might be needed for.
Right.
What would distinguish which fund you would take technology
Depends on the needs at the time. I mean, we can't, it's really important to understand that number one, the reserve, the capital reserve, I mean, I wish Michelle was here, because she can explain this way better than I can, but I'm going to try to give you my answer to the best of my ability. The facilities, the reserve fund that's generated from the revenue that we receive for the use of our facilities,
The revolving fund.
that is supposed to go back to regenerating the facilities. But legally, it can be spent for other things.
Okay.
So we used it to buy the switches. It's kind of maintenance. This clearly identifies what, my goal is to develop a very clear and transparent, because transparency is a very big concern. From the day I've walked through the door here, I want people to know we had 20 more kids move into first grade, which happened to me my first year as a principal, and we had to hire a teacher. This came from this, that's what the purpose of this fund
Okay.
really is in my
I get the
mind.
teacher part,
Right, right.
but I'm asking what other things might be included. You said technology, but we also can take technology of the revolving fund.
Right.
So can you think of other things that this fund might be the only place so that we don't deprive the students of the funds that were
I would
given
need
to them
Michelle
where
to
we
give you
have to
the-
switch?
How about a roof collapse? How about a boiler blowing up?
Well, wouldn't that be
Go to facilities.
capital
Facilities.
improvement and maintenance? Because so now we're asking for this one, so that's what I'm trying to
So your
determine.
concern is the definition of use and the
Right.
specifics
Where-
under which they
where-
could draw
what-
on.
I would need Michelle to provide you with the exact definition, but the intent of this warrant article is that there is no clearly defined staffing-related, regular education revolving, or not revolving, but reserve or emergency fund. And I've said that from the day I got here. It's not clearly defined.
So my
So,
second question is, do you have an idea of, you want to put $75,000 in this year, of what you would want to retain what level you would want to retain in that fund kind of on an annual basis? Or you're
Yeah.
going to every year want 75 more, 75 more, 75 more, or?
yeah, I think I've said this repeatedly in my entry plan process, and I'll say it again, that the reality is that these funds, although not expended, because I found out that the special ed fund, what has happened in the past is people have treated the special ed fund like you would only touch that if the whole budget was expended, right? Not just special ed, regular ed, everything, which is not how I've worked in the past. The way I've worked in the past is that the special education department expends their entire budget, uses the reserve, and then taps regular ed, right? So that's a huge shift for me in philosophy. And my point is that in order to run a $35 million organization, we need to have at least $800,000 in regular education available for emergent needs. We need to have $500,000 available in special education, and we need a couple $100,000 in technology. And until that occurs, paring this budget down in terms of line item needs and shifting all that money around that people have talked about around, like, for example, the facilities department. The facilities department has an amount for custodians and coverage for custodians when they're out. That hasn't been used in quite a while. That's someplace that I would cut quite a bit of money if I knew I had reserves if we had an emergency. But just last year, I had to pay $7,000 to have snow lifted from the roof on the back of the building by a crane because it got too heavy. That's an unanticipated expense. So what I'm saying to you is that budgets are a map, right? If you don't have adequate reserves outlined in a budget, in a map, you're just setting yourself up for trouble.
And I'm not questioning
No, I know
that.
you're not, so I'm trying to explain that the
we're putting in two new funds,
Right.
so like the,
One new,
One new.
One
The
new.
second is already
one
there.
new, one funding, and
One
an older
exists.
one.
so this isn't a new one?
No.
This is
Oh, okay,
The goal is to grow it to
Okay.
$500,000 to answer your question,
okay.
over a long period of time, 5, 6, 7 years.
So my comment is that special ed, as you said, and I know I'm in special ed, that you could have a kid move in, or you could have a student identified in the middle of the year that they need an out-of-district placement. It's huge money, and you can't, you would have to move money from general ed if you can't meet that need. You
Have to.
must meet that need. So why aren't we putting more money into the special ed fund there?
Right.
If that's only down to 200,000, that could be one out-of-district placement.
That is correct. The reason why is because you can move, you just said the reason why, perfectly. You can move the money from regular ed to special ed, but you can't move it the other way. So we're trying to build accounts that allow us the greatest level of flexibility.
So if you move from this fund to special ed, then you won't have any money left in this fund.
There's only one budget. If special ed needs a kid to be out of district for $200,000, there's the potential for someone to get pink slipped that day. I thought I was going to have to lay off staff last year. We had 3. It could have been 600 grand. Right? So I'm saying to you that if we build an adequate reserve account that can move to special ed if needed, but still be available should the need arise during regular ed, it allows us the flexibility to pare down some of these budget lines that we're concerned about with, in terms of not always being continuously used, but it still allows the flexibility to apply those funds across the district to different areas. So what I'm saying is that the answer is, it's better to build up a regular ed fund for needs on all fronts that can then be used for special education, but if you do it the other way, you can't move it back. So that's the answer to you. It's a great question. I just think it's important to note that it's the way the money flows. You can't move it out of special ed to regular ed, but you can move it the other way. And so I just trying to help folks to be able to cover things like, for example, I was really concerned the Swayze gym. We had to do the roof. It went from bad to really bad in almost no time. That had to come out of the end of the year expense, the end of the year amount that we had available. And I would prefer to be more transparent and say there's an account for that. The board voted on it publicly, and this is where it came from.
Isn't that the capital reserve? That's why I'm getting confused to general ed.
That wasn't enough money to cover that.
There wasn't enough money
No.
in there. So what's left in the capital reserve now?
I don't know. Michelle would have to answer that.
I'd like to answer Cheryl's question. Cheryl, capital reserve means a reserve of money.
But, okay, so this one's capital improvement and maintenance.
Right.
Wouldn't that be roofs?
No.
No?
Well, actually, yes.
It could.
It would be a capital reserve for capital improvements,
Expenses.
in which case, yes, you're right. Capital does specifically refer to facilities and tangible items, not human beings or courses or what have you. It all depends on how the warrant article is presented. And it has to be presented and memorialized in such a way that DRA can see a clear definition of what unanticipated educational expenses is. And I wish we had some information. I was preparing to ask Larry, because that's just the title. The title is semi-definitive. However, in the presentation, you actually have to present, this is what it covers, this is what it doesn't. And if you don't do that, it's not synchronized, and therefore, DRA probably would prevent you from actually putting the money in.
So you're suggesting that this is a very broad and undefined
I was just gonna.
bucket?
I have 2 comments regarding this warrant article, and I usually love capital reserve funds. It's very broad.
Big?
It would be nice to have a
if
few
we
examples in there,
received-
so you could
You gotta
kind of
be
get the
careful.
gist of it.
You gotta
Right.
be careful
I
with
mean,
examples.
That's got a good title, but hopefully Larry, I was planning on looking at Larry going, did the board give a definition?
I did not hear one.
Okay. That makes it very, that makes it very difficult.
That's the
for
question
me.
I was going to ask.
Isn't the definition in there for the purpose of supporting the cost of unanticipated educational expenses?
Well,
You've already sent this to DRA, right?
Very non-specific.
Well, actually, the question to
Makes it very,
ask,
very general.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that is too vague.
yeah,
I mean, it's way too
Unless-
vague.
So you think they're gonna buy sneakers for the superintendent? I mean,
I don't wear sneakers. I mean,
It could be the, yeah, it could
But
be
it
the.
has to be approved by the school board.
Right, that's the
I
point,
can't
Jack.
spend
Nice
that
time
money.
for,
Right, it lists them as being agents, but it does have to be, If I were a DRA, I would be looking at that going, that's really lovely. You know, and it is an emergency that your school board attend a seminar in Grand Cayman for 2 weeks in June.
I think that's
I'm not concerned about that. I trust them
Yeah.
that they're going to know
Right.
when it's
Yeah.
an emergency and unanticipated.
I firmly
But I'm
believe
just
that
would
things should
looking for
be.
some examples of, other than you need a new teacher. Like, what else would
Yeah.
be considered an educational expense?
My intent
Follow
of creating this account was to answer your question, was for staffing issues that were unforeseen, because we don't have anything right now for that need. I wasn't planning to expand it past that. I would have to ask Michelle what the specific list is, but I will tell you that Michelle ran this by Diane Goro and DRA to make sure that it was wide enough so that the board could allocate the funds based on the need, right? So there was an intent to make it wide, right? Because it's supposed to be for unanticipated needs. A budget's a map. We don't always know what the needs are. Things come up, things change, you know?
Yes,
Well, I do
Larry.
know for a fact that DRA is very restrictive on what you use this money for. And if they've reviewed this, then they're happy with it, because I know for a fact they'll scratch it right out.
Well, no, with DRA, you don't find out until you say, we expended money from this,
And
and
then
they
they-
look at you and they go, no, you didn't.
You're
Find a
right.
way to restore it, or a bunch of people will no longer be elected officials.
That's correct.
The other problem that I have with it, and it's interesting that it didn't show up. Let me preface this by saying, when we got our certain information this year, there was one place that I was absolutely shocked and appalled. We have $226,000 in special education capital reserve fund that made a little over $400 last year in interest. Exactly. They forgot to list in here, and it's, I believe, a presumption on the part of the board that it would automatically go to the Kingston trustees of the trust fund to oversee the capital reserve, because the school district cannot do it themselves. I would like to see that, I would recommend to the school board that all capital reserve funds be moved to Newton, who seems to have a lot better idea of how to properly manage money. I mean, put it this way, we have one major account for the library that has I believe it has $156,000 in it. It started 6 years ago with $125,000. I mean, it's making very good.
Yeah. Sandy,
Okay, so that's kind of,
no, this all goes along with this. Sandy and I asked that question because we both sit on the town budget
Town
committee.
budget.
Right.
And this is the first time we had actually seen that trust actually listed on the list of trust funds for the
On
town.
the town list, but it was a school reserve.
And it was the
fund.
school one, and we asked, what's the story here? I honestly still have questions about that. I would rather see it get off the town, get out of the town of Kingston, and it needs to go somewhere.
Well, you have,
I think we
Newton and
could
Kingston
control
are
it.
your only two choices.
I know.
I was a trustee of the trust funds in Newton for years. I know the present ones still. And quite honestly, we're talking, I calculated it out. It was roughly 0.02% interest that the district received on substantial money.
okay.
Okay, so-
I think
Let's
this is
move
something we
on
need
to,
to-
Why is that coming
you know,
up now?
considering this warrant, if we could, instead of talking about who's the trustee. Who's the trustee?
Also, if there's a concern
please.
about that, I'd like that to come to my office so I can look at it and do some homework and
That would
come
be a
talk to
great
y'all about it.
idea.
I'd be
Let's
happy
do
to.
that.
But I'd like
Interest
to
in the money
table
go to
that,
the
any
district.
further discussion on that,
Well, then
please.
let's move the question. I think.
Well, I think Jack had his hand up
I just
before
want to say
that.
that I do support this warrant article, because we've done it many times for Newton, for whether it's a new fire truck or whatever, and I think it's the only way to get that money up to where it's comfortable, that if a disaster happens, and I anticipate you putting a warrant article in here for the next several years.
Yes, sir.
Would it be 70,000 or 80,000 or 100 or whatever, but I fully support this.
Only if we have it at the end of the year, though.
Yes.
I would
Yeah,
not
and
ever
yeah,
ask
that's-
people
and
for
that's
more
the way
money.
This is written, right.
Right.
Madam Chair, just a point of reference. What I was building up to is, I believe the warrant article is flawed in that it's missing the attribution of the oversight of the monies.
Okay.
I believe that has to be included in order for it to be a proper creation of the warrant.
Okay, so the question's been moved. If we could vote now, all those in favor of warrant article number 9, please raise your hands. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and opposed? 1 and
I'm going to abstain.
1 abstention.
Actually, change mine to an abstention because my problem's with the language, it's
Okay.
not with the principle.
Mine too.
2 abstentions, and that language could
Language
be
issue.
modified at the deliberative perhaps, if you come up with your way to do it.
It'd be lovely if the school board brought it to the deliberative amended.
I don't think they can at this point, but somebody could make a motion from the floor, including a school board member.
School board has already approved all of these. We can't change.
But somebody from the floor could
Yes.
amend them.
And I'll work with Mr. Heath on these concerns, just to kind of
Yeah.
take a look at, I mean, we can call Diane again and ask her.
Yep.
I mean, I've talked to her 3 times about it.
Okay,
but-
so let's move on to Article 10, please. The capital reserve fund, which is already established, and this is to raise and appropriate 25,000 again to come out of the June 30th fund balance, which would be, again, the same story about it would not get returned to the taxpayers. Instead, it would go into this reserve fund. Are there any questions about this or
Make
comments?
a motion to recommend.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion?
We don't know how much is in there now?
I
It was
It's
given,
about
it was given to us.
150,000.
thought it was 150, but
I think it's
Michelle's
about
not here, so I,
153,000 or something. We have that number that's been given to us.
Does anyone know the last time that we allocated funds to this?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a few years. We moved some money from one fund to another a few years ago. We established it one year, it was funded for 100,000, and we moved about 50-some thousand into it from another fund and stopped that fund.
I remember that,
And it's
yeah.
kind of sitting still since then. So this is the first funding in about 3 years, I think.
That
I
sounds about
wrote
right.
down $232,000 on the sheet.
I think that's the.
Is that
I thought that was special
Special
ed.
ed.
That's special ed? Oh,
Yeah.
that's where I wrote it. I didn't.
Michelle gave us all the fund
Okay.
balance.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have.
I was just gonna say,
Okay.
I've got them somewhere.
Okay, there being no further comments, can we have, everybody in favor, please raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Okay.
yes! Sorry, that was like one unanimous vote all night. I love it. That was great. What a way to end the night.
Put away, except we're not done with
We're
it.
not done.
But
You can go.
But you can go, we're just gonna talk about slides and stuff.
Oh, okay. Are you
Which
guys
I
really all
can't-
set? I'm happy to
Folks,
help.
I can't put them up on the screen.
Thank you.
You know, it's just, it's not working. I sent them to you. I can tell you that Michelle is reviewing them to make sure that our, numbers are 100% buttoned up. I added, from the deliberative session, or from the public hearing, I took out the one about kind of the next steps.
Yeah.
I put in one about, and, this is up to you folks, but I put in one kind of showing the whole picture after, you brought it up, Charlton, like, oh my God, $600. I was like, let's put this as a slide to show people what the impact is of everything. And then on the addendum, I've added some history about budgets and money that was left over, so that we can see that the reserve funds have gone down a lot. They were about 1.2, they were about 900, then they were about 1.2, then they were 1.5, and now it's projected to be 750 or 780, including the food fund. So, I think that's just an important ingredient, but that's the only changes to the slides that we had. Is that okay with everybody?
Fine with me.
I have a,
Is there
Yes?
going to be a public comment? I don't see any.
we're not
Well,
done yet.
we'll
On the
get you.
agenda.
We'll get you.
Stay in the barn.
Yeah. Charlton,
I'm going to
yes.
make a motion that this piece that I handed out showing that says tax impact increases, that this be added to a slide
Slides.
presentation as I wrote it. As I wrote it.
I
So,
would like
there's
to
my
amend that
motion.
motion because.
Well, you can't
three-
amend a motion, we already went
Oh,
through
yeah,
that.
okay, then,
Hasn't been
okay, we need a
seconded.
second.
We need a second.
Oh,
Second?
geez.
Okay. So it's open for discussion. So without amending it, I would say that I would rather have, if we're going to have that, have 250, 300, 350, because 250 is just below the average, 300 and 400 are not the average.
So
You know,
you're
it's just, I just don't think it's an accurate
Are
reflection.
you gonna change all the others in there then, too?
The only ones I've got in there are the 300. So you're talking about an addendum, right?
No, this is gonna go into the slide presentation.
You want a final assessment overview of impact.
Okay, well, I can tell you what I've done, and I can't pull it up now because
I hate to make
nothing's
you
working.
do it, but it's.
No, it's fine.
I
just
have
want
it
you.
here, well,
I just want
I
you,
have
oh,
numbers.
I mean, I've done one like that.
Yeah. So it tells the proposed budget, the default budget on the,
And on the $400,000 home, right?
It's only for 300 that's
for
on there.
300,000,
Yeah.
ice hockey, total with proposed budget, total with default budget, and difference. It doesn't have the contracts on it.
Yes, it does have the contracts. It's on the second line. Contract 151 or something like that.
Oh, maybe it's not showing up. Oh, there's stuff that's not on here. Some of the words you wrote aren't on here.
Oh.
Like Kingston, it says, but it doesn't say Newton.
Okay, there is a Newton. Are you looking at it on Google
It
Slides?
says 22. It
Are you
says
looking
total
at-
tax impact on ballot in March.
Are you looking at Google
Oh,
Slides?
contracts total, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm going to take you all up on the option to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drive
Sorry,
safe.
I just,
That's
Yeah, your
okay.
eyes
this is way beyond me, but.
Carol, which slide are you
This is so totally not anything you
Yeah,
can.
okay,
22,
all right.
right?
I'll call you about the warrant article
Okay.
questions, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Drive safely. It does
Slide
have the
22,
contracts.
Cheryl?
It doesn't have them separately. It has both of them. It just says contracts total.
Yes,
So it doesn't have,
it doesn't have support staff and then,
Yeah.
and professional staff. No, it
so
has
it's lumped
contracts
those
total.
in together.
Is that okay to have contracts total, or do you
I-
want them separate?
Well, I think since everything else is separate, because you might want to vote for one and not the other.
Okay, I'll separate
So
them.
separate them.
I think
Whoa,
it
whoa,
should
that's
be-
not my motion.
Yeah, we're
I
on the
understand.
We're
motion.
on my motion.
Okay, your motion is to have 300,000 and
No, my motion is to
400,000.
have this incorporated as I wrote it into the presentation, the deliberative presentation. That's my motion. That's my motion. You guys want to defeat that and then go into the weeds on
But
the rest of
I
the stuff, you
think,
can do that.
I think.
Sandy,
Please,
wait a
Sandy.
minute, Sandy has her hand up, yes?
I'm in support of that, especially since Tom said that he confirmed the numbers. It's
Confirmed them.
accurate.
It's accurate. Let's just call it a question.
So-
Jack?
Well, I'm going to say that
Jack had to-
that's really, it's really the same thing. Would you say so, Cheryl? Is what you
But people would have
a
to do the
different-
math to get the total.
Yeah. That's
This
which-
one
yeah,
does the math.
Which we could.
There is a slide that has
Total.
the total on it. I think you're looking at the one that has the total,
Well, no, Charlton's also includes,
400,000.
I thought I saw the sheet. It also included the capital reserve, the money you're not getting back.
Okay. If it would be okay, I would rather put it in an addendum rather than add it as another slide, but, you know, it's up to you folks. Whatever you want to do.
Let's vote.
Let's vote on it. Everybody's in the, getting
Yep.
what they're going to do.
So,
Okay.
I'm sorry, his motion is to add it as a slide. Is it in place of one of the ones that Annie has, or just add it?
Add it,
Add it.
add it.
I can tell you, I'm not going to be able to put it on one slide and have it legible. It would have to be two.
No, What, okay.
Yeah.
It can be
could
split
do
by
it.
town.
Can't hurt anything.
What?
Yeah, you
Maybe
can
split by town.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be all right. I'd find that if you had to split it.
I think
Yeah.
you have
Split by
as
town.
much on this slide that's on here.
Except I don't have the 400,000. Okay, so all in favor? That's 4, and opposed? That's 4, so it's defeated. I would like to, if it's all right with everybody,
I will
put
tell
it
everybody,
in.
I will print these out and I'll pass them out at the deliberative session.
May I suggest that I add them to the addendum? Would that be okay?
No, Thanks.
Because then they would be
I'm all
printed
set.
out for everybody.
I'm all set. I'll print them out. I'll see if the public gets this information. All set.
Can he do that as a member of the budget committee, or
Of
would
course
it have
he
to
can.
be done as a
resident.
private citizen?
Resident
He's a
assistant
resident, he can
taxpayer.
speak.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But I will put them in the addendum also, because
I
I
think
think it's
that's a good
valuable
idea.
information. So,
It's information that will show that we're not trying to hide anything.
yeah,
My
I think it
concern
needs
in
to go
voting
there.
against it was that it convolutes, and it doesn't contradict, but it shows the same kind of data with a $300,000 home twice and a $400,000 home. And it's just superfluous, I like that word.
Redundant.
I think it's
I just
valuable.
want to make sure that this is not distributed, Charlton Swayze, member of Budget Committee, that people would think that the Budget Committee is endorsing your thing. So I don't have any problem with you doing it, but since it was not voted as a Budget Committee, it shouldn't be
Add it to the
distributed and
addendum.
represented.
Well, I would like to ask if, I'd like to make a motion that we add this as 2 addendum slides, one for
Second.
Kingston, one for
Yeah,
Newton.
I'm off of that.
Will you second that?
Yes, I will. yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you're opposed? Are you opposed, or?
Well, why don't you say opposed, and then I'll
Opposed?
raise my hand.
I love how
was
everybody
just
tells
gonna
me the way I
say-
should do things. Yes.
Charlton and I, not together, what I did was a different methodology. I looked at this slide, and that is quite confusing to me. What I would like to do is get rid of slide 23, and what I did was, each warrant article, go across Newton, Kingston, so you have the
I see.
warrant
Yeah.
article with the default, not the default, totals, which, that's where it gets confusing on here. And then I included 9 and 10, which do have a monetary impact. Those are the two,
The opportunity
that could
cost of
actually
not
all be
getting your
shifted
refund.
up and.
I'd be happy to use that format. I think that, that works out.
Yeah, I just,
I mean, the idea is just to present that information. I'm not trying to hide anything.
And
yeah,
you want
I,
it to be as clear as possible.
Yeah.
yeah. See, this to me got a little fuzzy, because I started looking at the bottom, it says the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, we need to change, that word has to go away, because it's the difference between what.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you
Slide
want, I can
23.
give you.
Yeah, I'd love to have that. Thank you.
I'm starting to
And
fall
what I'll
asleep.
do, if it's okay with everybody, is I'll play with them. I'll send them out to you. Tell me what you think. I mean, this is our presentation, so I'm trying to get, I want your input, definitely.
And these are all numbers directly off the supplied warrant.
Got it. And you know what? Michelle's going to be looking at all the numbers, too.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Charlton, for doing this. Public comment.
I'm not gonna make it too long.
Hi, Jim Baker, Newton. I just want to, because I was part of the negotiations for the contracts, I just want to tell you about the step question. And Jim's right that the average step is about 3.5%. But the matrix that we worked off of took every single employee and put it into a spreadsheet. And it said exactly what their pay is, what step they're going to be on, what their FICA contribution is, their withholding, their retirement, and the reduction to the district in the cost of the insurance. So when you put every single employee in the step matrix where they actually are, the average is not 3.5%. It's below that. Part of it is because there's substantial number of people that are on out of the steps that get $1,000, which is a 1% increase on their salary, because the average salary at that level is about $85,000. And then you've got a lot of people, I think it's 16 positions on that matrix, that are below that. So when you take every single individual and plug them in to where they are in the cost structure,
the increase is well below 3.5%. And then you take off, or you add in the, the FICA and the benefits and all of the other stuff, the retirement, and then you take off the 1% the first year from the health insurance that they're going to have to pay, and the next year it's 2% off. You get out, your first year, the total increase of all of that is 3.4%. And the CPI right now is running at about 2.8. So that's what we went from. It's 2.8 for the CPI. We gave them 3.4. We negotiated 3.4.
CPI?
Price index?
I know, I just want to,
Yeah, it's the interest, the government's calculation of the inflation rate. And the second year, Larry, do you remember this? It was 3.56 or something like that for the second year. So that's the actual percentage increase over their current pay after the health deduction, after everything else. Just say, that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any further comments?
Sorry,
Yes.
just in response to the public comment, the contract, when it was printed out, used to contain the matrix with the superscript numbers, because that was actually, it used to be placed in the annual report. That's why, as soon as I got it, I fervently looked and I went, oh crap, this doesn't have any of those numbers. Now, it did 2 contracts ago. I noticed that on the one that I found for the
Last year.
the lapsing contract did not contain that, because that gave somebody like me the ability to look at it and go, okay, let's see, there are 20 people off matrix, so they're getting 20,000, and in order to do the average right, you have to remove them from the aggregate, because the way it was presented the other night, all the people are basically, the way it was said, the presentation gave the impression that all people are currently on the matrix, and therefore, so you have a difference between the rhetoric of pure logic and less pure logic. When you start saying the average salary increase, nobody's actually getting that average salary increase.
No.
Some people get it, so it's not an average, it's actually either a median or something else. Because for those on the matrix, the average, the median salary income increase will be substantial.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people, but I have no way of documenting that.
And I don't either right now.
I mean, I'm glad to hear that you have one, and I would certainly love one. A copy of it.
We didn't get that, did we? I think they took that back from us.
Because there's nothing negotiable about the fact that there are 2 people on step 1 and 3 people on step 6.
Right.
That is.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, you're not negotiating who's on what step.
no, you're not. that
What you're
has
trying to
something do-
figure out is, if you make a proposal, what the total cost to the district is going to be based on where people are going to be on the steps for their position. So you're right, that you can take an average, and as a guideline, you can apply it, and then you can add the percentages to that and take any deductions off of that, and you'll get a guideline. And you're absolutely right, that guideline is 3.5% plus whatever the percentage increase was.
Right.
But when you look at the actual cost, it's based on who's in what step, what their specific percentage is, added up total, along with the benefits and any deductions, and that gives you what the cost of the district is. And it's not the 3.5% plus the 1.75 plus the 2.25, I think it was. It's a total of 3.4 for the first year, so $502,000, and a total of 3.56, or what it was for the second year, a total of 600-some thousand. It's not 3.5%, although 3.5% is correct for the average of the matrix.
And it's all an estimate, because
It's only
it's
an
assuming
estimate.
that all the staffing remains the same and everybody's health insurance election remains the same.
Oh, and the
It's a-
people are not kept on step. I mean, there's a lot of variables.
Right, so, what courses they took over the summer, whatever.
Well, this is
Can we
one
have
of
a
those-
motion to adjourn? Okay?
Larry's talking.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah, Sandy wants it to go as
We're adjourned.